Holyrood on collision course with Westminster as Holmes prepares to become Scotland's First Minister.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 28th of March. This is Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thank you for your company. Leading our news this morning, the new leader of the SNP has vowed to resurrect the controversial gender reforms that brought down Nicola Sturgeon as he prepares to be formally confirmed as Scotland's new First Minister. The pledge puts him on course for a legal clash with Westminster, which previously vetoed the proposal.
Landlords will be able to evict tenants causing disruption within 2 weeks as part of the government's new plan to tackle antisocial behaviour. Under the proposals, drug use, drunken behaviour and excessive noise will all be grounds for eviction.
Governor of the Bank of England has blamed early retirement for high interest rates and rising inflation. The warning from Andrew Bailey comes after the Chancellor's budget, in which Jeremy Hunt launched a series of proposals to get people back to work.
6 people, including 3 children under 9, have been killed in a school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. The 28-year-old shooter, a transgender ex-student, was killed by police at the scene.
Day 2 of a high-profile court case into alleged phone tapping by the publisher of the Daily Mail. Yesterday, the Duke of Sussex made a surprise appearance at court alongside Sir Elton John, who is also bringing legal action against associated newspapers.
So lots to talk about this morning. We'd love to hear your views. Get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.uk. And don't forget, let us know where you're watching or listening from.
Why? Why is that important?
Well, because we like to give people a shout out. We like people to feel included in the programme. We are the People's Channel.
Do you mean like I'm listening in the bathroom?
No,
or I'm listening in the car?
Or on the toilet. No, what we want is somebody listening from Glasgow, particularly Scotland this morning we want to hear from, because it was a huge day for Scotland yesterday. Are you in the Shetland Islands? Are you in Edinburgh, the Highlands, Inverness? You name it. We'd love to hear from you. Or indeed, anywhere in the UK.
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
OK, you never heard of him last week. He's now Holmes today set to be on course for a clash with Rishi Sunak over Scottish gender legislation. And later he'll be confirmed as the country's new First Minister.
Well, he's only 37 years old. He'll be sworn in today after pledging to challenge Westminster's veto of the reforms, which, of course, contributed to the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon.
Labour and the Conservatives now believe they can capitalise on his victory, with 20 seats up for grabs in the wake of a damaging leadership contest for the SNP.
Well, let's speak to Dan Falvey. He's head of digital news here at GB, and he can bring us up to date on all the latest. Look, apart from the fact that he's an interesting character in himself, 37 years old, the first Muslim leader in Europe, got a bit of a bad track record as Health Secretary, indeed known as Hamza Useless.
Yes, that's the case. And the thing is, he's also seen as being continuity Sturgeon. And we've seen that with these gender reforms that he says he's going to keep ploughing ahead with. He's going to challenge the UK government on that. And we've seen it when it comes to how he tends to go about Scottish independence. He, during the leadership contest, said that it was all about building what he called a constant support for the constant majority for independence. And yet he seems to be just pushing ahead in the way that Nicola Sturgeon was. He said that he's going to immediately ask for the powers to hold a new referendum as the first thing he does as First Minister. So he's very much taking up exactly what Nicola Sturgeon did. And we talk about useless. We saw how it went for Nicola Sturgeon. It didn't work.
Well, I suppose there's a couple of things about this. You know, if you're Scottish, if you're living in Scotland, how important is the whole nationalism thing, the independence vote for you more than anything? Is that more important than your health service, than your policing service, than fixing the roads, whatever it happens to be? Let us know on that. The second thing is, why would he put himself, or are we just talking this up, meaning we, the press and media, this gender recognition bill business again? If Westminster have said it's illegal, if it brought down Nicola Sturgeon, why does he want to get involved in that?
So there's 2 different things there. When it comes to whether it brought down Nicola Sturgeon, there is some evidence that Nicola Sturgeon was becoming more unpopular anyway. And this was seen as maybe the final tipping point, but it wasn't the gender reform bill alone. And therefore, with a different face, maybe there's a bit more support for it. Will be part of what he's thinking. Whether it's illegal, the UK government blocked it, but he wants to challenge it in the courts because he believes that actually it is legal. So he thinks that actually he can very much go ahead with this. He can push the UK government to court, and he thinks that this will help prove that there is a case for Scottish independence.
Vote winner, vote loser?
There doesn't seem to be the support from it from a lot of Scottish voters. So it's an interesting one to keep pushing ahead with, and it comes down to, again, that, continuity sturgeon.
So, look, who are the big winners in all of this? Lots of speculation that the SNP probably aren't going to be the big winners from this. Will the Conservatives do well out of this, or is it likely, as it says on the front of the Times this morning, that Labour is eyeing up extra seats from SNP?
Without a doubt, both the Tories and Labour will both be happy with the way this entire leadership election has gone. Sturgeon being out of the picture, the fact that, as you said, Eamonn, they were all unknown candidates, really. But I think Labour are the ones who will really actually be the ones who benefit from it. As much as happy as the Conservatives are that they'll have seen the back of Nicola Sturgeon, Labour has normally done well in Scotland when it comes to elections, and traditionally it was always seen that Labour had to win seats in Scotland if it was going to win a majority in the House of Commons to form a government. So they'll be looking at this and going, the path to number 10 looks a whole lot clearer with Nicola Sturgeon out of the way.
I just want to repeat a congratulation made by Michael Gove yesterday. He sent his congratulations to Hamza Yousaf and then quipped, the 52%, 48% vote win means no need for another election. Which I thought was a funny point about unionism and anti-independence from Michael Gove, which was worth repeating. In other news today, new laws. We've been talking a lot about antisocial behaviour this week, and these ones in particular in relation to rowdy tenants and new 2 weeks rules for landlords.
Yeah, and what we're seeing, again, this antisocial crackdown that we're seeing from Rishi Sunak, what's interesting is that we have had a Conservative government now for 13 years, and the danger is when you start making big announcements about cracking down things like antisocial behaviour because you think it's unacceptable, is voters start to become aware of it and they go, hold on a minute, why haven't you done this already? Why haven't we seen this happen before? And we similarly saw yesterday that, they're doing a big push on illegal immigration. The bill was in the House of Commons yesterday on that. And again, the more you talk about illegal immigration and how high it is, the more that voters are going to sit there and go, well, hold on a minute, why haven't you done this before? So Rishi Sunak is trying to clear up in a number of areas, but as he keeps doing so, the danger is that he just reminds voters that he's not dealt with it already.
What do you want to hear from our viewers and listeners today in terms of feedback on Scotland?
On Scotland, we really want to know exactly what they think this means for the SNP in terms of, do they think that Hamza Yousaf can deliver that independence? And at the same time, do they think he's right to be going ahead with those gender reforms? I have a feeling I know what most of our viewers are going to think about that, but it's always good to get confirmation, so they should always let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Just finally, I just want to ask you about Rishi Sunak. He's appearing before one of these big select committee meetings today, and it's Sir Bernard Jenkins, who probably landed the biggest blows on Boris Johnson last week during his grilling, who'll be leading that today. How do we think Rishi Sunak will fare?
Yeah, so this committee, it's kind of like, it's a super committee, if you like, made up of all the leaders of the select committees. So Rishi Sunak will be grilled on everything from all different topics. So it will be a bit on legal immigration, a bit on the budget, a bit on probably the changes in Scotland, and a bit on his Windsor framework and Brexit. I think we can expect that this is normally something that the Prime Minister will spend a number of hours preparing for, but they're never normally comfortable for the Prime Minister. This isn't like PMQs. They don't get to kind of make a couple of barbs and a few quick quips and get away with it. They will be given an answer and they'll be drilled down again and again and again, and he will have to be very much on top of his brief in order to come out of it. And the good thing with Rishi Sunak, he is normally someone who is on top of his brief. He normally can get away with it.
Details man. Dan, good stuff. Thank you very much. We'll see you again in an hour's time.
The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, has welcomed the Israeli Prime Minister's decision to halt his controversial gender reforms following 3 months of massive protest.
Benjamin Netanyahu says the plan was delayed to avert civil war. Let's go to Tel Aviv, where we're joined by Israeli legal scholar Yaniv Rosny. Good morning to you. Look, lots of reports in the British press this morning about how a civil war has been staved by the delay to some of these reforms. Is that overstating it, do you think?
No, I don't think. I think that the social divides were so severe. So Netanyahu has made the right decision to stop for now with the reform and to move towards a more, perhaps, balanced reform that would be incorporated.
Right, I'm afraid we're having terrible trouble with our connection to the professor there. We'll see if we can re-establish that connection, but in the meantime, let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines at 6:10.
3 children and 3 members of staff have died after a shooting at a private Christian school in Tennessee in the USA. Nashville police shot and killed the 28-year-old transgender shooter who was armed with at least 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun.
Shop price inflation reached a new high this month amid warnings that soaring food costs are yet to peak. The British Retail Consortium says shop prices are now 8.9% higher than they were a year ago. It says the rising price of sugar, alongside high manufacturing costs, has contributed to price rises for chocolate, sweets and fizzy drinks.
But has it put us off them? Prince Harry has alleged unlawful actions of the Daily Mail publishers made him cut off friends as people came under suspicion for leaking stories to the press. The Duke of Sussex is amongst a high-profile group, including Sir Elton John and Elizabeth Hurley, launching legal action against associated newspapers. It denies the allegations, which include recording private phone calls. So all of that court case against associated newspapers, that's all old stuff from the Leveson inquiry. Yesterday we were talking about, I thought all that had stopped. Well, apparently
not.
No, apparently it has stopped.
Oh, right.
It's historic.
Historic, okay.
Historic. It's
Okay.
all stuff that they
Interesting.
used to get up to. So when you go to the gym today, I'm just reading here,
Yeah.
Isabel, that you should concentrate on your breath work and guttural screaming as well. And there's a story here in the Eye, double-page spread, about a woman called Eleanor Peake, who embarrassingly went for these breath workouts that she had, and basically it leads to what is called a cosmic orgasm at a mental health gym.
What? So
So-
doing breath work in a gym can cause a cosmic orgasm. I've heard it all now. What even is a cosmic? Or maybe we don't discuss that at 10 minutes
you
past
seem to
6.
know. You seem to know.
I don't know.
You said that it causes a cosmic orgasm, and then you pulled yourself up. Obviously,
I have no
you've
idea.
experienced one of these
Goodness
things.
sake, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. So
Right, well, look.
I don't know what you do in the gym. I make funny noises at the gym.
Yeah.
I do. I have to
trying
say.
hard. It causes
yeah.
guttural
But I never thought
sounds.
that my guttural sounds.
Well, heaven forfend. I think that would be terrible.
But it might be the thing that I and you, listeners and viewers, need to do with these things. Other stories about. So there's this story about. Right, the cost of living crisis is such that parents who have kids that you can't get rid of, basically, in the house, they should charge them rent. Now, you were sort of outraged by that, but I would have thought that was a pretty normal
No, listen,
procedure.
I was outraged because I think it's lovely, actually, that there's intergenerational living. My grandmother lived with my parents before she died. I lived with my parents for a stage. I think it's really nice. However, if your parents are slogging their guts out and you've got a 30-year-old living and sponging off them and not contributing, that's not okay. I think if you're comfortable and able to help your kids, great. But, you know, like you said, your parents would have charged you rent, but you would never dream of doing it to your children.
Oh, my parents would have charged. I was expected, as soon as I earned, I was expected to contribute to the household, as was anybody who was living.
Because your parents were working hard, right? Your mum was raising the boys and your dad was working hard.
Yeah.
But if there's all
I
these
hadn't got
over
any money.
50s who've retired and are living in their lovely lap of luxury and their kids are living with them but working hard, then perhaps it's nice to help them out.
Later
It's tough for the
on,
kids
I want to
these
know
days.
what the Governor of the Bank of England means by retiring early leads to higher interest rates. I'd like to know how that is the fault of anyone who decides to retire
Well,
early.
I believe it's because the economy is shrinking as a result. We've had less growth in the economy because of all these people leaving productivity, and therefore that leads to increased...
But the economy
rates.
could be shrinking because of, let's just pluck something out of the sky, Brexit. Could be that, couldn't
Well, there's all these factors to factor in.
Right.
Yes, we can return to Israel now. Professor Yaniv Rosnay, we're told that the line is sorted. So let's pick up where we left off, talking about the unrest. And I was asking a few moments ago whether or not we think that by pausing some of these controversial reforms, Benjamin Netanyahu's managed to see off a bit of a civil war.
I think that is precise. The social divisions were so bad now in Israel with those who oppose or support the reforms. So I'm glad that Prime Minister Netanyahu has, for now, paused the reforms. Hopefully, we can get a more balanced with the opposition. Right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yaniv, I'm afraid we've got to give up on your link, the Wi-Fi link there. Really bad. You've frozen on us once again. We say thank you for trying, and goodbye to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Just a reminder, the Foreign Secretary, in relation to all of that situation in Israel, has been urging for compromise, and we know that President Biden very concerned about what's happening there, and we will keep an eye on any developments in Israel for you.
Now, when you wake up this morning, is the first thing you reach for a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or the Voltarol, right? Coming up, why a quarter of you have a chronic pain condition, and we'll find out why more and more people are turning to relief in the form of acupuncture. Would you try it? Do you practice it? What do you think? Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Ask and we receive lots of emails coming in from Scotland this morning. I want to bring you this from Sandra Reynolds, who's listening from Inverness. I'd like to see the new First Minister concentrate on education, cost of living and health, what most people care about right now, not gender reform and certainly not Indie Ref 2. And Andrew Jones, good morning, great show as usual. It is true, Hamza does appear to be continuing Nicola Sturgeon's Indie campaign. However, it is a breath of fresh air to have a new First Minister after a long 10 years with Nicola. And finally, John Faulkner has emailed saying the election of Hamza Yusuf is the best news to the Union with his restatement of aims of Sturgeon. They are doomed at the next general election.
Doomed.
We're all doomed.
Right, coming up to 20 past 6, a quarter to 7, we're going to be bringing the latest on the phone tapping trial after Prince Harry made a surprise appearance at High Court yesterday. What were they talking about? We'll tell you. And as the new CEO of Starbucks announces he would work in one of the coffee chain branches once a month, We'll be asking if that's empowering or patronising the head of a company to get their hands dirty. What do you think about the boss person on the shop floor 7:20? And if you've had that experience that the boss, the CEO, comes and works on the floor, whether secretly or overtly, let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GBnews.
Now, new data from the British Acupuncture Council shows almost 3/4 of people prefer trying alternative therapies, such as acupuncture, before prescription painkillers when dealing with chronic pain.
Data from the council also found a staggering rise in the number of people seeking alternative treatment after being unable to tolerate NHS waiting lists caused by the pandemic. Acupuncturist and practitioner director from the British Acupuncture Council. Gosh, that's a long title, isn't it? There she is. She's Sarah Major. She joins us now. Sarah, hiya. Very good to talk to you. There's a lot of claims about acupuncture. Basically, who would you recommend it for, and what do you believe it can do?
Well, acupuncture has been subject to a lot of research over the last 40 years. And the evidence is that it is very effective for musculoskeletal problems, chronic pain, and for migraines and headaches. NICE currently recommended as a first stop for chronic pain.
Sceptical, I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't know much about acupuncture. I thought it was perhaps something like reflexology, or I just didn't really know much about it. And a good while ago now, I broke my wrist. And after taking the cast off, I had absolutely no flexibility or movement in my wrist, and it wasn't getting any better, and I was referred to an acupuncturist. And I kid you not, the acupuncturist put one needle in the middle of my forearm, and before my very eyes, my hand went like that. And ever since then, I've been a convert. I saw it with my own eyes. I could not move my wrist. I don't know what this acupuncturist did, but it was absolutely life-changing for me.
Well, that's really wonderful to hear. And I think this is where the British Acupuncture Council is pushing to validate these anecdotal stories with really robust evidence. And in recent times, we have been demonstrating exactly the sort of experience you've had, and it's wonderful to hear firsthand. I've witnessed the same from the other side as a practitioner.
I bet you the first thing people say to you, Sarah, is, does it hurt? In my experience over the years, yes, it does.
I don't think so.
Well, you are not my body. You're not...
Well, you've obviously got a low pain threshold.
Well, I can tell you, my whole problem, you talk about that musculoskeletal thing and into your legs and lower back and all that sort of thing, Sarah, but I've found, bingo, they hit really sensitive points with me. So it's not that I'm saying it doesn't work, it hasn't got benefits. I'm just saying, I just can't stand the pain on the whole thing.
But Sarah, we only have to look to the States to see what happens when we become too dependent on painkillers and opioids and all the rest of it. And it's creeping in over here, I fear. I don't know if you get that feeling. So is there a case to be made for acupuncture to be the first port of call more commonly than drugs?
Yes, Isabel, you're absolutely right. The opioid crisis is increasing dramatically over here. And unfortunately, if people access the NHS through their GPs, the GP's first line of treatment is painkillers. And this is just fueling this crisis. Fortunately, and as you've experienced, acupuncture can be an alternative to popping pills. And 70% of people we found in a recent study would prefer to use complementary pain relief for pain, for chronic pain. And 36% are much more likely to seek that alternative therapy than go through the NHS due to the current crisis. Acupuncture is a really effective painkiller, has been demonstrated by research that NICE has approved. And just to go back to your point, Eamonn, we've found out that actually 23% of people fear that acupuncture may be painful. 20% have a fear of needles, but really, I think the consideration is that we think of needles as users of the NHS in terms of injections and blood taking for tests, whereas the needles that we use for acupuncture are very, very tiny. And yes, you do get some sensation when the points are stimulated, but most people describe this as being really transitory and minimally painful. And actually, the majority of people describe it as a comfortable sensation, sometimes a tingling, sometimes a slight dragging. But really, the fear of pain or needles should not put people off. Acupuncture really is a very, very pleasant, relaxing treatment.
Yeah, lots
no,
of
it's
emails
not.
Oh, God.
No, I've had hundreds of them.
You can fall asleep during it.
Basically, you can also hit the jackpot, Sarah, and it hits the nerve centre on, and it's not a pleasant experience. I mean, I'm sure there are times that it can be.
Yeah.
But let me, I'm just speaking personally.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, what way does the National Health Service embrace you guys, Sarah? Or does it not?
Yeah. It's still quite difficult to access acupuncture through the NHS, although many physios are training to use acupuncture techniques that they can employ as employees of the NHS. So it is possible, but we at the British Acupuncture Council are really encouraging the NHS and NICE to consider acupuncture as a first stop treatment that will be available to all patients.
From somebody called Paul Mills. I suffered with tennis elbow for many years. I had cortisone injections a few times, but it didn't cure the problem. My doctor suggested I try acupuncture. They had a visiting therapist once a month. I had the treatment once and I was cured, and I've never suffered from the problem since. I mean, anecdotal evidence, as you say, but lovely to hear these kinds of stories and refreshing to have something different from the kind of take the painkillers, numb the pain mantra.
How do you explain how it works, Sarah? What is it actually doing?
Yeah, the acupuncture is over 2,000 years old, and so the actual fundamentals of the treatment methodology were developed many, many years ago. We access a different system of the body. Although acupuncturists are trained in anatomy, physiology, and normal medical training in their 3 years of training, we access something that is described as qi. It's like the fundamental energy that drives each individual and really makes each person more susceptible to certain illnesses or disease or propensity to chronic pain in the format that we're discussing. So it's slightly difficult to explain because everybody thinks in Western terms, and although, as I say, we acknowledge anatomy and physiology and pathology, we use a different system of diagnosis and treatment to access the body's own ability to heal itself, really.
Where that continue, it's a new way of looking at things, and your people, the British Acupuncture Council, say that 7 out of 10 of its members have seen a rise in the number of people looking to treat chronic pain in this way. So thank you very much indeed. We'll see if that affects the NHS backlog situation as well. But that's Sarah Major. Sarah is a practitioner and she is the director at the British Acupuncture Council. Thank you very much indeed, Sarah.
So stay with us. We'll be discussing landlords' rights to evict tenants under new antisocial behaviour rules. We're discussing that with Norman Baker and Emily Carver having their say next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing with the audience very much at the heart of it, like like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back.
Yeah, very welcome back. Yeah.
6:31.
Let's bring you up to date with the front pages of the papers, well, most of them. The Express leads on the Prime Minister's promise to fight every day to stop Scotland breaking the United Kingdom.
Here's the Scotsman. It says the new leader of the SNP, Holmes, has pledged to reach across the divide.
Telegraph, Governor of the Bank of England, has blamed early retirements for increased interest rates and inflation. I really do want to get into the thinking of that one. I think that's fascinating.
And the Times is reporting that landlords will be able to evict tenants within 2 weeks as part of government plans to tackle antisocial behaviour.
Daily Star says experiments will be carried out in space to attempt to tackle Earth's nastiest diseases.
It's life-saving boffinry, Jim, but not as we know it. What are they on about?
Joining us to go through the papers, more details, we have Norman Baker and we have Emily Carver. Very good to see you both.
Thank you.
Norman, let's go to Scotland first of all, and the new First Minister will be appointed today.
Yes, indeed. And all the other opposition parties, Labour, Tory and Lib Dems, are all saying they're very happy with the situation. They all think that now Nicola Sturgeon's out of the way, then the SNP is going to lose seats. They're probably right. Nicola Sturgeon was a class act, let's face it. She was there for many, many years and won a succession of elections. However, and this new guy, Hamza Yousaf, has been hardly a success at his three portfolios: health, justice and transport. The interesting thing about the SNP is, if you dig into the SNP, they are a very, very broad church. They're full of people who are very right-wing and very left-wing. And the only thing they have in common is that they want Scottish independence. And once you take that away or look beyond that, then they are like cats in a sack. Now, Nicola Sturgeon held them all together, but I doubt whether the new guy, Hamza Yousaf, is going to do that. And I must say, it's not a very encouraging start. The first thing he says he's going to deal with ID gender issues. Well, that's hardly the most important issue in Scotland, to be honest with you.
And going for independence referendum again.
Well, he's got to say that, because that's the thing that holds the party together.
He's going to do.
Am I alone in being impressed by his age, the fact that he achieves this position at just 37?
And a happy birthday to him. It's his birthday today.
Is it?
Right.
Oh, gosh, what a birthday present.
Yes.
Wow. He's got a lot on his plate. There was a very good article in The Spectator this morning that details all the things that he needs to fix, and support for independence is only one of them. You've got the attainment gap in education, you've got university, access to university for people from poorer backgrounds, drug deaths, NHS, transport, which of course was one of his briefs. And he was an absolute disgrace, actually, as a Justice Secretary. He wanted to get through this hate crime public order bill that would have brought in a new offence for stirring up hatred, which was so vague it could have criminalised people at their own dining table for saying something deemed, I don't know, racist or sexist or misogynistic or whatnot. So I think he's a bit poisonous, and I do worry what he means for Scotland.
It's also quite interesting, only 26,000 people voted for the First Minister in Scotland, country of 5.4 million. And here we are with Rishi Sunak also not having won at the ballot box. And another leader in the same... It's an unusual turn of events? Apart from the fact also they're both Asians, it's also a big sort of ethnic coup as well.
Well, of course, under our democratic system, people are elected to Parliament for their individual constituencies, and then the parties coalesce and choose a leader. That's the way it works. But it does mean that we don't have a presidential system, so people do feel sometimes they've had a prime minister or a leader of a party thrust upon them they didn't necessarily want.
But would you say probably we are closer to unionism with Humza Yousaf, keeping the union together even?
I think that he will not be as effective as Nicola Sturgeon. She was a class act, and I think probably the other three parties who are saying they wanted him to win, they may have wanted Katie Forbes to win as well, who knows? But they said they're very happy with the results, and I think that probably means that independence is off the agenda for a while.
Emily, would you be happy with the new proposals to strengthen landlords' position? Front page of the Times. They can evict rowdy tenants within 2 weeks.
This is quite interesting. I think at first glance it seems like a good idea. We need more landlords on the market, not fewer. And if rowdy tenants and not being able to get rid of them is an issue, then it needs to be solved. But it's quite interesting that this will be part of the Renters Reform Bill, because that bill was meant to protect the tenants initially. It was meant to include protections, including bans on no-fault evictions and things like that. But now, obviously, they're looking to help landlords who have to put up with rowdy, antisocial tenants who don't pay their rent.
Well, that's the key bit. I think rowdy and antisocial tenants are quite different from those who don't pay their rent. We know how much rents have increased in the last year, disproportionately. And, if people fall behind on rent, they can be evicted within 2 weeks. And this follows on from the day before, the government saying that they're going to be moving along antisocial beggars. Well, begging and homelessness has been on the rise when there's been an increase in inflationary costs in renting. I do think there's an alarming tone to that.
So do I. I have to say begging and homelessness actually was controlled quite well during COVID, because local authorities and the government took steps to try and get people off the streets into safe places. So actually it decreased at that point, which shows that the state, when it intervenes, can actually deal with this in a humane way. But, going back to using the 1824 Vagrancy Act, which is, I gather, what they're going to do, strikes me as pretty horrendous, to be honest with you.
But that's a different issue from the landlord issue, because landlords aren't charities. So if they do have tenants...
Well, give me that again.
If they're tenants, landlords aren't charities.
Oh, right.
I mean, as if tenants are not paying their rent for months on end, I think it is fair that they get...
Well, we've said after 2 weeks there is a clause that they can evict them.
But I think maybe the wording's a bit odd there, because I doubt it would be if you missed 2 weeks of rent that you could be evicted.
Yeah, that would be wrong.
Several months in a row, and then they can get rid of them in 2 weeks. But I don't know.
I think what we need is not more landlords. We need more houses to be built, and we need more social
More council houses. Let's be old-fashioned. It worked very well.
Absolutely right. Yeah. What is the reticence about building council houses? They're expensive?
Well, Mrs Thatcher, if you go back to Mrs Thatcher, she made a big thing and got great success in the ballot box from getting people to buy their own council houses, which in a way I didn't object to. But the great problem with that system, which went wrong, was councils not allowed to use the money which they got to build new council houses. And therefore there's been a decreasing number of social houses. People are forced into the private rented sector, and there aren't enough, and rents go up because there's more demand than there is supply.
We've got a lack of housing across the board, not just in the social housing sector.
Yeah, but we need it in the social housing sector, and I think that I think it's fine selling off social housing, but not replacing it. It's terrible. That's the terrible thing about this.
What about Prince Harry? Not only did he turn up in court yesterday unexpectedly, straight off an overnight flight, but the King and his brother are too busy to see him, apparently.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I expect Harry turned up without notice. He didn't tell anyone he was coming. And, people do have diaries, and the King is off to Germany.
The King was supposed to be in France. He's suddenly free. He could have come a day earlier.
Well, he's off to...
worked quite nicely.
He's off to Germany to see his relatives, I think, today.
I think if your son that you were in good relations with was flying in, you'd make time.
You probably would do. And the fact is that the royal family is scared to death of talking to Harry in case whatever they say to Harry then appears in the press the next day.
True.
And that's what's driving this. But the interesting thing about this court case, which involves Elton John and my old colleague Simon Hughes and others, who are alleged that the Daily Mail caused them to be bugged and followed, is that the person they refer to as the private investigator who allegedly was working for the Mail Gavin Burrows had, according to the Mail and other papers, completely denied he was working for the Mail, which, if true, really pulls the rug from under the case. But, I mean, the fact that Harry turned up in court yesterday demonstrates he's taking this matter seriously.
I'm a bit confused about why the case is there, because there was recourse to a lot of these newspapers for, you know, if they were found to be doing illegal activities after Leveson or whatever, that people could claim from them, they could sue them and whatever. So none of this is current.
Well,
all
I
of
read
this.
some of it was in relation to 2021, but I might have got that wrong.
No, I think it was earlier than that.
But
I mean, I think there was a lot of... The Sun and the Mirror, in particular, had a lot of cases taken against them, and the Mail, by and large, escaped that. And I wonder whether it's, in fact, Harry and Meghan have declared war on the Mail, whether that's driving this, and they've pulled in other people with them.
Am I right in thinking that Harry's back in court on a separate case on the 9th of May, the week after the coronation? So essentially, these two cases are sandwiching.
I'm not quite sure about that, but I thought there are certainly other cases he's pursuing, which...
I'd quite like to see the evidence. I wonder what evidence there is.
Perhaps he will do, who knows? I mean, my suspicious mind also wants to know who's paying for his flight, because I think it might be the taxpayer. And also where he's... Yes, indeed. I think if he's undertaking semi-roll duties, he can still claim the fare from the taxpayer. And also, where's he staying? Is he at Frogmore Cottage or is he somewhere else?
Well, I'll tell you what, he definitely had security yesterday.
Yes, and who's paying for that?
See that around him, and very interesting. I don't know who's paying for that.
He got pushed around a bit as well.
No, he was too busy smiling at somebody in the crowd. He walked straight into a photographer.
Yes, that's right.
I wondered if it was Ellie Costello.
And he brushed him out the way.
Yeah. Right,
so Gwyneth
court
Paltrow
cases.
coming down the hill, and she doesn't see this doctor guy, and it's all ended up in court.
Yes, this retired optometrist is saying Gwyneth Paltrow, insisting Gwyneth Paltrow hit him with a blood-curdling scream. But Gwyneth Paltrow is insisting that this optometrist crashed into her on the ski slopes. So who does one believe?
Well, I don't know. I just think it's all a bit unedifying.
It is.
I don't see that it really needed to go to court, and
Well, he's suing her for £300,000 because apparently he's had brain damage.
A drop in the ocean. She could have made this go away.
That's true, but she's hitting him with a counter-suing for $1.
Yeah, it's a point of
principle,
I suppose. Yeah.
But you get these court cases where somebody moves our garden fence 3 inches, and there's a massive court case which they spend up spending £200,000 each on to determine who's guilty in that particular case. They all lose out massively. The people who win are lawyers.
Yeah. Oh, Norman, here's a great thing.
It is.
Yes. So you could get on board a cruise ship, a luxury cruise ship. Yeah, for 3 years.
No.
And it only costs, when you look at it, 73 grand.
3 years on a cruise ship. Have you heard about people when
Have
they
you
get
been on a cruise?
norovirus?
Have you been on a cruise ship?
No, I haven't.
Well, there you are. Wait till you get on one.
But we get these people, they have these outbreaks of norovirus.
I know they have,
can
yeah.
never disembark.
And they're going to 135 countries, apparently, and they're going to sail 137,000 miles. But for 3 years on a boat, they're going to be under house arrest, effectively.
Gosh, no,
and they actually have turned... It says on the paper here that they're going to make an indoor golf course on this ship. I don't know how big this ship is, an indoor golf course.
It'll be very big.
It must be very big for a golf course. But the other reassuring factor, it's got a morgue. So if you die on board...
People will die.
You can be kept on board in a morgue.
Oh, grum.
Don't fancy that.
Do you fancy that, Eamonn?
Yes. What, 20 grand a year or 30 grand a year?
First boat out of here, you're on there.
20 grand a year.
After-dinner speeches for 3 years.
But look at how cheap that is. And you get food.
They'd pay you to
everywhere
be on
you
there.
go.
That'd be a great gig.
It is lovely, except my wife doesn't do boats.
Wow.
She doesn't do cruises.
Should we do a fundraiser to get Eamonn on the boat?
She gets motion sickness. But, I mean, you've never been on one, no?
No, I've been on a boat. I get motion sickness too, even on a ferry.
But you've never been on one of these?
Nope.
I've got on one of those giant boats to Bilbao, that takes a day.
No, that's a ferry.
Across the Bay of Biscay.
Have you been on a luxury cruise?
It had a cabin and all that jazz.
Well,
Actually, Anna got one to the Hook of Holland from Harwich.
What about with the other people?
Look, you haven't experienced it. Just keep quiet. You aren't qualified to talk about it. It is the most... They have theatres which would rival anything you get in the West End, whatever. They have cinemas, they have skating rinks, they have ice cream machines on every corridor.
On every corridor.
Mr. Whippy type stuff. You just walk past.
Eamonn,
you get a slap.
Eamonn,
What if you don't like
newsflash.
them?
They've got theatres and ice cream stalls on land.
Not
In
at,
London,
not
for
at 20
example.
grand a year for 3 years. You know,
It says here that a quarter of
price.
the passengers are under 47, which I find extraordinary.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be the staff.
And
That'll be the staff.
Well, passengers. And
Oh, sorry.
The average, the
Oh,
average age is 56, apparently, from booking so far.
Quite young.
It is, yeah.
All the more reason to go, Eamonn.
Well, there used to be a TV series called The Love. What was it called? The Love Crew, The Love Ship.
I have
The
no
Love Ship,
idea.
was it? This American TV series. The Love Boat, right? And so everybody that met up with it and the crew were all dressed up in uniform, whatever, and everybody dressed for the captain's dinner, whatever. And basically everybody, there was romance everywhere.
Yeah, but I think there'll be murder on board this thing. Coop me up for 3 years. Oh,
3 years
I'd be
with the same
murderous.
people.
Right, what about this story, Emily? Front of the Mirror. David Jason's got a... Is she a love child or what? I mean, an unknown daughter that's appeared. Not only an unknown daughter, but a grandchild has
Yes.
appeared after 52 years.
His family has suddenly grown. So David Jason, the Del Boy legend, he's found out that he has a daughter who I believe is 52 years old. And he never knew about her all that time.
And are his family happy about this?
Well, apparently he's delighted.
They look
And they've
very
taken
happy.
them on board.
They look very
Apparently
happy.
she noticed that her nose looked similar
Stop
to
it.
his.
She was watching Only Fools and Horses and thought, hang on a minute, that's my...
Well, she already suspected because her mother knew him at that time and they had a romance. But yes, because of the nose, she was drawn to
So,
him. And
was there a DNA test?
Must have been.
Oh, I don't know. I imagine so.
Well, they all seem happy with the outcome in it anyway.
Imagine that, Eamonn, if you found out you had another kid.
No, that wouldn't be happening. Because I'm telling you,
Got enough of those.
no, I've only ever had sex for procreation reasons.
Oh, really?
Good Catholic.
I'd have known. The governor of the Bank of England. How come? Has anybody worked out why retiring early is to blame for high interest rates?
Well,
No, Telegraph might have, but...
I had an email explaining this. It was very clear. I'm going to try and dig down and find it whilst you talk amongst yourselves.
Andrew Bailey has blamed a wave of early retirement for increased interest rates and inflation as Britain battles the steepest price rises of any large, rich country.
Retiring early is down to the fact fewer available workers means there's greater inflationary pressure on wages. Raising interest rates is the means by which people are encouraged to save more and spend less, with the result that employers find they sell less, profits are reduced, so there's less money to spend on pay rises.
Yes, employers are having to spend more. to
Except
recruit.
saving rates haven't gone up, have they? The banks have been doing very well with not raising rates for savers.
Well, like yesterday, we were talking about bricklayers, employers offering 150 grand for bricklayers because they just can't get their hands on them.
Quite a lot of pressure on older people to get back in the workplace. It seems to be constant.
Old people? I mean, they're 50.
Older.
Oh, right. 50.
Older.
Yeah.
Older.
Well, you know, somebody's messed up the business model somewhere along the line. Just like to know who it was and why it was.
Later on, we'll be talking about Finland and how it's been voted once again the happiest place to live. And their working hours are very strictly, I think something like 4 o'clock they knock off. And it doesn't seem to affect their productivity. So we're obviously doing something wrong here. Everyone wants to give up work just as soon as we can. Apparently it's based on freedom to make life choices. You know, work-life balance. Heaven forbid people have work-life balance.
And we've gone down the list.
Yeah, we're now number 19.
Would you support a 4-day week for everyone? Shorter working
I think
days?
before we all get so excited about Finland, it's dark in Finland all the
High
time.
suicide rate?
It does. The Scandinavian countries do because it's dark for about 3-4 months.
And they drink
Yeah,
a
but
lot.
it's all Scandinavian countries. At the top of this, Finland, Denmark, well, Iceland, but, you know...
I bet Israel's gone down in the last few days, I must
Which
say.
has?
Israel's fourth. I bet that's gone down the
I was
list.
surprised to see Israel there. Scrap that.
Iceland's a happy place to live, though.
All they do is read. And apparently it's like Christmas Eve. That's what everyone sits around and reads. And it's a big...
They've got one university in Reykjavik. They've got, you know, everyone knows each other. You walk down the road and you bump into people you know. I know this because I went to visit a friend who's from there.
It's like 1950s Britain.
Quite a nice little community, yes. Lots of little
Maybe I
fish
should move
restaurants. Dodgy weather, though, and there's a funny smell when you arrive.
Sulphurous.
So it's very sulphurous, but yeah. But I've been whale watching up. It's lovely up there.
You know, before everybody downs it, I just think there's a lot to be very pleased with living in the United Kingdom, and, you know...
Do you know what my favourite thing about living in the United Kingdom is? No big poisonous spiders or snakes.
Snakes, that's true.
I'm so grateful.
We do have adders, but...
yeah, but I've not yet seen one, so that's fine by me. You know, you go to these lovely hot countries and you think, I couldn't live here.
Couldn't live here.
Perpetual fear of being... Anyway.
I think the best is a sense of humour in the country.
Yes, we're good. Very good sarcasm.
OK. Guys, thank you very much indeed. The guys will be back in 40 minutes' time with more stories from the papers. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
3 children, 3 members of staff have died after a shooting at a private Christian school in Tennessee in the United States. Nashville police shot and killed the 28-year-old transgender shooter who was armed with at least 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun.
Shop price inflation reached new highs this month amid warnings that soaring food costs are yet to peak. The British Retail Consortium says shop prices are now 8.9% higher than they were a year ago. It says the rising price of sugar alongside high manufacturing costs has contributed to the rises for chocolate, sweets and fizzy drinks.
Hamza Yousaf set to become Scotland's next First Minister after defeating his rivals to become the new SNP leader. The 37-year-old, or maybe turning 38 today, will become the youngest to win the job and first to come from an ethnic minority background.
The Prime Minister will be grilled by senior MPs on post-Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland today. The Commons Liaison Committee will question Rishi Sunak on his Windsor framework, newly signed with the EU. Despite opposition from the DUP and other Conservatives, he'll also be asked about the economy and tackling small boats in the Channel.
And Britain's welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's delay to his judicial overhaul, which has sparked mass protests. Mr. Netanyahu announced the delay to the controversial plan to hand over judicial control to the government, Israel's most right-wing ever.
So here we are, day 2 of this high-profile court case we're talking about, these celebrities, the publisher of the Daily Mail. Ellie Costello reports.
Well, day 1 of this preliminary hearing was a total surprise. We were told that none of the high-profile claimants would be appearing in person in court. It would all be done through written submissions. And at around 9:30, a certain Prince Harry stepped out of a London black cab and made his way through the front doors of the Royal Court of Justice. He was clearly a man that wanted to be seen. He was walking confidently, so much so that he actually walked straight into a paparazzi, but he did seem very happy, jovial. He was saying good morning to the waiting press as he entered the courtroom. He then sat in the back of the courtroom and he made notes on a black notepad, listening very intently to the barristers' submissions on both sides. At lunchtime, he was joined by Sir Elton John, another one of the claimants in this case. He made his way into the Royal Courts of Justice via a side entrance, was also joined by his husband, and just 2 seats along from Prince Harry was the actress Sadie Frost. So just some of the high-profile claimants appearing in person in court. So clearly, optics are very important to these claimants. They want to be seen in court. There was no need for them to be here, but they're clearly sending a message that they want this to go to a full trial. So the group of claimants are accusing Associated Newspapers Limited, that's the publishers of the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday and the Mail Online, of major breaches of privacy and alleged illegal information gathering. David Sherborne, who is representing those claimants, said all 7 of them are victims of unlawful acts by the publishers, including breaking and entry into private property, the bugging of phones and homes, and placing microphones in cars. We saw saw in written submissions in court that the actress Liz Hurley had her phone bugged, and Hugh Grant, who was with her at the time, had a microphone placed in his car. They also allege that individuals were impersonated in order to access hospital records and also of treatment centres by deception, and the accessing of bank accounts and bank statements through illicit means and manipulation. Now, the claimant's barrister David Sherborne said that these allegations range from a period from 1993 to 2011, even all the way up to 2018. We also heard details of Sir Elton John and his husband, who was so upset by disclosures of their private information in the newspapers that they had someone watching cameras in their home every single night. So we did get some detail of the emotional impact that this has had on some of the claimants. Well, Associated Newspapers, they strongly deny any of the allegations. They describe them as preposterous smears, and they also say that it's too late to bring this claim to court now, bearing in mind that some of these articles do go back 30 years. They use the word stale, saying it simply should be dismissed now without trial. But I think it's fair to say that seeing Prince Harry, Sir Elton John and the actress Sadie Frost all in court for just the preliminary hearing suggests the strength of their feeling on this matter, and they want this to go to a full trial.
Ellie Costello with that for us. Stay with us as we ask what now for Scottish independence. We'll have more on the SNP's new leader, Humza Yousaf. But first, Aidan McGivern has your Tuesday forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A dry and, in some places, chilly start, but a lot of cloud across the UK. Rain is already arriving into western parts, and that rain will sweep across the rest of the country during the rest of the day. Low pressure increasingly in charge of our weather over the next few days, that low sitting to the west, bringing southwesterly winds. That means mild air, but also moist air, and we're certainly going to see a lot of moisture in the atmosphere during the rest of the day. So by late morning, the rain reaching parts of central and eastern Scotland, falling as snow over the hills for a time, before it's just rain, and it's going to be a damp afternoon for the vast majority. A lot of cloud, that cloud sitting on the hills in the west as well, so quite gloomy out there. And it's going to feel cold, I think, especially in the east and northeast, where the cloud comes in after a cold start to the day. But Northern Ireland, the exception. Here, 14 Celsius is possible because the sun's going to break through by the afternoon, albeit with some heavy showers. And those showers will push into western Scotland, parts of northwest England, North Wales, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere as well. But the main area of persistent rains moved through by the early hours of Wednesday. And a lot of cloud remains, I think, as well as a breeze. So it's going to be a frost-free night. Temperatures in most places staying at 8 to 11 Celsius. But it is a cloudy start to Wednesday, and there's more wet weather lining up to come in during the morning. That's going to affect parts of southwest England into Wales, Northern Ireland, as well as northwest England and the Midlands by lunchtime. Further north, some cloud breaks, some sunny spells coming through, and it's going to feel much milder all of a sudden. 15, 16, perhaps even 17 Celsius. We keep that mild air on Thursday, a mixture of sunny spells and heavy showers on Thursday, and then the potential on Friday for some very wet and windy weather, especially in the south.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Holyrood is on collision course with Westminster as Humza Yousaf prepares to become the First Minister of Scotland.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on this Tuesday morning, the 28th of March. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The new leader of the SNP has vowed to resurrect the controversial gender reforms that brought down Nicola Sturgeon as he prepares to be formally confirmed as Scotland's new First Minister. The pledge puts him on course for a legal clash with Westminster, which previously vetoed the proposal.
Landlords will be able to evict tenants, causing disruption within 2 weeks. As part of the government's new plan to tackle antisocial behaviour, under these proposals, drug use, drunken behaviour and excessive noise will also be grounds for eviction.
The Governor of the Bank of England's blamed early retirement for high interest rates and rising inflation. The warning from Andrew Bailey comes after the Chancellor's budget, in which Jeremy Hunt launched a series of proposals to get people back to work.
6 people, including 3 children under 9, have been killed in a school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. The 28-year-old shooter, a transgender ex-student, was killed by police at the scene.
And it's day 2 of a high-profile court case into alleged phone tapping by the publisher of the Daily Mail. Yesterday, the Duke of Sussex made a surprise appearance at the court alongside Sir Elton John, who's also bringing legal action against associated newspapers.
Thank you very much indeed. Keep getting in touch throughout the programme today. GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
So it's our top story this morning. Humza Yousaf is on course for a clash with Rishi Sunak over controversial Scottish gender legislation as he prepares to be confirmed as the country's new First Minister.
He's 37 years of age. He will be sworn in today, an historic today, after pledging to challenge Westminster's veto of reforms, which contributed in part to the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon.
Well, Labour and the Conservatives now believe that they can capitalise on Yousaf's victory with 20 seats up for grabs in the wake of a damaging leadership contest for the SNP. Well, let's talk to Dr Sandesh Gilani. He's the Shadow Health Secretary for Scotland and a Conservative. Good morning to you. Really interesting to see how this could all play out for the opposition parties, I suppose, because we've seen, haven't we, the descriptions of Humza useless, and his record isn't exactly glistening on the last 3 portfolios that he's held. Labour seems to be licking their lips. Can Conservatives gain anything from this?
Absolutely. Look, we have to be clear that Humza Yousaf, for all your listeners and all your viewers, that he was the health secretary, and an absolute disastrous health secretary. But he's also somebody who claims to be the first activist, who claims to be somebody who wants independence over everything else. He's not focused on the day job. He's not focused on the things that he should be doing. And he talks up a divisive referendum when really what we need is somebody to concentrate on things like the NHS. So what we are seeing is an SNP party who are split, and it is absolutely right that the Conservatives need to show the real alternative to the people of Scotland and get their trust.
Why would people vote Conservative, though?
It's very simple. We understand health. I'm a GP. I work in the health service. I get it. I get the issues that are going on, and we have produced a recovery plan which actually has ways of helping people straight away. We're not saying that we need more money. We are creating policy right now that we will be announcing at the end of April at our Scottish Conservative conference. And we are the party who are the real alternative. We are a party who have ideas and a party that are going to show the people of Scotland that we are serious about governing.
The Conservatives obviously recently had a leadership contest, and I think we've all seen how damaging these can be for the party themselves. In fact, some of the slurs or criticisms that were being put out there by Kate Forbes during this contest will be used now by you, by the Labour Party, probably printed on every leaflet at upcoming elections, won't they?
They're not slurs. Those aren't slurs that Kate Forbes was saying. It was the truth. The record, and don't forget, Kate Forbes is part of the own government. She's the finance secretary to the government that she is criticising. This is a government that has never delivered. The biggest thing, the only thing that Nicola Sturgeon claims that she's ever done is the baby box. But when it comes to education, the government's record is terrible. The government's record at delivery of anything from ferries that will never sail to the NHS is abysmal. The SNP government is one that is inept. It's a government which does not deliver for the people of Scotland. And Scottish Conservatives are offering a real alternative to people because we are laser focused upon recovery of the NHS. We're laser focused upon education. We want to ensure that our justice system works for the victims and not, as the government are doing, a soft touch.
The SNP, though, many may argue, Doctor, that they are focused on independence, that they're focused on gender legislation as well. The Scottish people watching us today and listening to us today, how uppermost in their minds is this? Is independence the single biggest thing that when you wake up in Scotland, you think about first in the morning?
It is what the SNP think about first. If you watched their hustings, all they spoke about was independence. Holmes Yousaf described himself as the first activist. That's what he wants. He wants to break up our great country. Kate Forbes was exactly the same, and Ash Regan also talked about nothing but independence. That's not what the people of Scotland want. It's not what anybody in the UK wants. What we really need is a government that works for us, a government that is doing things like recovery in the NHS, is doing things like improving our educational standards. What we don't need is a government whose Holmes Yousaf says his first act is to ask the UK government for a Section 30 or to hold another referendum, and who wants to challenge the UK government in court over the gender reform bill, which, let's be honest, they're not going to win because legal advice quite clearly is going to show that this is not something that they should have legislated over. And that's the problem. It's the competence of the government in Scotland. We need both governments, the UK government and the Scottish government, to work together for the betterment of the Scottish people. And that's what you would see if you had a Scottish Conservative government in place here in Scotland.
Quite aside from party politics, can I ask you a question as a man of an ethnic minority, how significant it is to see the first ever ethnic minority First Minister? Somebody pointing out yesterday that we've got Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, we've got the Mayor of London from an ethnic minority of Asian descent, and then now, of course, Holmes Yousaf as First Minister in Scotland, and also, I believe, the first Muslim leader in Europe. Does that matter to you? Is that of importance?
We have to congratulate Holmes Yousaf and his family. for becoming First Minister, and so long as he gets through the vote in Holyrood. But look, the Conservative Party have a history of promoting people to the top. We have had women prime ministers before anyone else in the United Kingdom. We have had Rishi Sunak already, who is the prime minister for all. And that is something that we need to really take very seriously, the United Kingdom prime minister. But look, it is important that people from any group can look up and say, yeah, I could do that. I can be in politics. I could be First Minister. I could be the Prime Minister, more importantly. And so that is important. But just regardless of race, regardless of creed, Humza Yousaf is somebody who is failing upwards in government. He is somebody who has done a really bad job at justice with the ferry scandal. You look at his record when it came to being transport minister, where that was just it was just not great. The hate crime bill, which isn't coming through as justice minister. So and the NHS is an absolute disaster under his watch, and yet he has been made First Minister because he says he's a continuity candidate. And all that means is he's going to continue not delivering for the people of Scotland.
Well, you've made that point. It wasn't a political question, but politicians can't resist political answers. Dr. Sandesh Gilani, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Tom Harwood now joins us in the studio. He's been reflecting on that interview and looking at the whole overall situation, Tom, in Scotland. Mr. Yousaf, what do you make of him?
It's a really interesting situation in Scotland because, of course, the SNP do not have a majority in the Scottish Parliament. And this is part of the reason why we're hearing a bit about gender reform today, why the coalition agreement or the association agreement with the Green Party in Scotland really matters. In order for Humza Yousaf to become First Minister, there's a formal vote today. He has to be voted by a majority of members of the Scottish Parliament. And that means he has to get the Greens to vote for him as well. Part of the reason why we're seeing some of this gender stuff is because that was part of the agreement between the SNP and the Greens. In order to stay in power, they do need to pursue this sort of legislation. And clearly there's been some discussions behind the scenes between the SNP, its new leadership, and the Scottish Green Party.
So are you suggesting this could be tactical, just to make sure he gets through the vote in Holyrood today and then he might drop it?
Well, he does need this agreement to persist. So I think that the SNP under Humza Yousaf will continue to bang this drum, even though it will likely be struck down by United Kingdom courts. It's an interesting one for him to bang, of course, because the people of Scotland don't seem to be particularly behind it. I think it is fair to say that the SNP looked distracted in using so much parliamentary time talking about this stuff at the time of a cost of living crisis, when there's an NHS crisis, when there are so many different issues that people face. The idea that this was one of the top priorities for the Scottish government looked to people to be a little bit out of kilter.
And you heard Dr. Gilani there saying that the Conservatives in Scotland could really gain from all of this. Do you think there's any truth in that? I mean, we know that under Boris Johnson, the Scots really didn't like him, did they? Is Rishi Sunak more popular north of the border?
Well, interestingly, I was talking to a good number of Scottish Conservative MPs over recent weeks who were concerned about Kate Forbes, because what has not been really understood across this country, and Kate Forbes, of course, came a narrow second to Humza Yousaf in the SNP leadership contest yesterday.
52-48, as Michael Gove pointed out.
On the second round. It's amazing that actually some SNP members are not already calling for a second rerun of the vote. But no, it is interesting that Yousaf did not win on the first round. Indeed, more people did not vote in the SNP leadership contest than voted for Humza Yousaf in the first round. It's not an enormous mandate. But the crucial point is that Kate Forbes clearly tapped into something in Scotland. Scotland is a more socially conservative country than Nicola Sturgeon has liked to paint it out to be. And to some extent, those handful of Scottish conservative seats, whether it's along the borders or up around Aberdeen, they have a big constituency that some Conservative MPs were worried Kate Forbes might well pick up, might well tap into. So the fact that the SNP has now gone all in on the sort of much more, how might we describe it, Glaswegian central belt, socially liberal mind or worldview, They, to some extent, are jettisoning the more traditional Scottish vote, perhaps in the Highlands, the islands around Aberdeen, and certainly down on the borders as well. These are some areas where the Scottish Conservatives might well be able to tap into the more traditional vote.
OK, Tom, thank you for analysis there.
And your analysis are very welcome. Get in touch with us the usual ways. You can tweet us or you can email us, and we'll be very welcome to reflect your views on the whole Scottish situation. With the time approaching 7:15, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
3 children and 3 members of staff have died after a shooting at a private Christian school in Tennessee in the United States. Nashville police shot and killed the 28-year-old transgender shooter who was armed with at least 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun.
Shop price inflation reached a new high this month amid warnings that soaring food costs are yet to peak. The British Retail Consortium says shop prices are now 8.9% higher than they were this time last year.
Prince Harry says alleged unlawful actions of the Daily Mail publishers made him cut off friends as people came under suspicion for leaking stories to the press. The Duke of Sussex was among a high-profile group, including Sir Elton John and Elizabeth Hurley, who launched their legal action against Associated Newspapers Limited. They deny the allegations.
Two people have been arrested on suspicion of assault following a protest at a hotel housing asylum seekers in Newquay.
Devon and Cornwall police say around 20 protesters and 150 counter-protesters were involved in the demonstration over the weekend. And our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, has been following the story.
How do you live with yourself? Let the fascists go and you nick someone?
Newquay 2023. The surfers' paradise lost for the time being. Since some 200 migrants moved into the Beresford Hotel on the seafront, it's been a town on guard and divided. Those divisions now getting personal, getting angry, getting violent.
People here, I don't even know who they are, hurling abuse at locals, calling them fascists. Basically, it's caused a lot of unrest in the town, a lot of conflict. It's done a lot. It's not done very well for Newquay. You know, we've got a huge homeless problem in Newquay. We've got a huge homeless problem, and we've got people locals that are, you know, having a hard enough time as it is with the present living day crisis that's going on.
Homeless like this man.
I've been on the streets 20 years, and at the end of the day, like, they've been here 10 minutes or however long it took for them to get over here and then get on the register to be put into accommodation straight away with benefits and a phone and 3 meals a day and fed. And I think, what about the people? What about the servicemen that are out there that, like, fought for our country? What about, like, what about people that haven't got enough money to survive anymore?
The whole debate about where to house refugees, or in fact whether they are refugees at all or whether they're economic migrants, is one that now, for the people of Newquay, is beginning to sound personal. And it ties in with the whole issue of the cost of living. People here are finding life very tough at the moment, and it's getting emotional.
So we all should stick together as part of a team. It's not fair. It causes depression. But the thing is, the police are not helping at the minute with people that are depressed. And I'm suffering with depression myself. Sorry, I might get upset.
It feels too much for some. It feels they're losing their town. Some tell me they're afraid to speak up for fear of being called a fascist. Others tell me Cornwall's a welcoming county. Refugees welcome here, one and all.
If my family had to live like they have to live, I'd get in a boat and risk it. I really would.
In a statement, Newquay's MP Steve Double said what is deeply regrettable is that many of the people from both sides are not Newquay residents and travelled into the area in order to protest. I don't believe these people are reflective of the vast majority of people who live and work in Newquay, who in my experience have been incredibly tolerant of the whole situation. The divisions are certainly deep. The wounds raw. The hope is they can heal before the tourist season begins and Newquay can start surfing once more. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Look, that's Newquay that we're featuring there. This may be happening in an area that you live in. It's affecting where you live, maybe where you holiday. Maybe you can't get into the hotel that you used to stay in for your holidays. But that is the way it is. That's the way the asylum situation is going and spreading over the country. How does it affect you? What do you think the solution should be? Get in touch with us this morning and let us know.
Coming up, as the CEO of Starbucks has decided to spend time working at one of his coffee shops, we'll ask if it's good for company culture or a cynical PR move. That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end.
I can't
Britain's
wink.
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Looking ahead at some of the things we will be featuring on our marvellous little show for you this morning. What have we got?
Well, the UN's World Happiness Report's just come out, and they've named Finland as the world's happiest country for the 6th year in a row. So at 7:45, we'll be discussing what is so great about Finland. And
have you ever been?
What we could learn from it. No, the closest I've been is Sweden recently, a few weeks ago. But I did slightly fall in love with Sweden, so I quite like Scandinavia, culture and everything. What about you?
There's a Finnish vodka, isn't there? What's that one called? It's in my mind, but that's all I can
Absolute
really...
vodka, is that Finnish?
Could well be, don't know. But that's all I can really think of. What do I know? What would I know Finland for? Do they make cars?
Well, right on the border with Russia, so they're dealing
not
with
like
all that.
they don't like make Volvos or Saabs or so they.
Gosh, what's
what do
Finland
they do?
famous for? There you go.
Santa?
I think that's Norway, isn't it? Lapland. Or maybe that's Sweden. Oh, gosh.
think
Right, we're going to do some studying on Finland before 7:45.
And then at 10:10, we're going to go to the High Court for the latest on the phone tapping trial after Prince Harry made a surprise appearance yesterday at the start of this hearing. This hearing is going to last
4 days.
Okay.
And I'm hearing Nokia is an export from Finland.
Is that right?
Yeah, Nokia. You can just imagine them saying it in a Scandi accent.
But do they still make Nokias?
Yes.
Well, you say yes. You have no idea. You have no idea.
I've seen people with... I bet Norman's got a Nokia. He strikes me as a man with a Nokia.
25-year-old phone. Yes. Right.
Anyway, keep your thoughts coming in. We're loving your emails this morning and your tweets, and we'll read as many of those out as we can throughout the programme.
Now, Starbucks have a new boss, right? And basically, that boss has decided that he will work as a barista 1 day a month, and he's doing that to help understand what his business is like on the front line.
It's left many wondering whether CEOs getting stuck in is helpful or harmful. Should bosses share the workload with entry-level staff, or could it be deemed patronising?
Well, joining us today to discuss this, we've got the entrepreneur Alex Proud. We say good morning to you, Alex. Nice to have you on board. Alex, you think getting stuck in shows respect for staff. And then there's CEO Pamela Ray Welch, who says it's nothing more than a cynical PR move. Tell us more, Pamela.
I think that it's a really interesting state to go. I want to get back onto the shop floor. I'm going to be spending 1 day a month. But in reality, it's going to be an augmented reality at best. They're going to be disrupting rotors. It's not going to see the finest, the actual real life, what it's like to work in a Starbucks store. We all know they're going to be pulling all-nighters beforehand to make sure that the shop looks great. They're going to be making sure that everything is run into process. It's going to be a complete augmented reality that's nothing more than really like a selfie opportunity.
Yeah, which leads me, Alex, to think, why don't they just go to someone or hire someone who's got experience in that field or some sort of history in that field in the first place?
I mean, they probably do as well. I mean, secret shoppers is a fairly common thing. I mean, even a business like mine, let alone a giant like Starbucks, will have plenty of secret shoppers. That's not really the same, though. I think as a CEO, a boss, a senior manager, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be egotistic about title. It's about experiencing yourself. There is a difference to that. As for the thought of, oh, well, the staff will all be prepared, that's kind of rubbish, because at the end of the day, you just rock up somewhere secret. You don't have to tell them where you're going. Quite often when I go to my restaurants, the management team will have no idea I'm going. Make sure I don't tell anyone else in the company. It's not particularly difficult to fox your staff and where you're going, and it does reveal things to you that maybe a secret shopper won't pick up. There's subtleties there.
Yeah, Pamela, I mean, do you not accept there are things to be learned? I mean, CEOs have a lot to think about, which perhaps doesn't involve the actual day-to-day running of the company. And very often, actually, they might understand the product, whatever it might be, better if they see how it's created, how it works.
I think there's a great opportunity for him to learn at the coalface what the customers are asking, but from a staff perspective, you know, saying that you're going to go in there secret, I doubt the size of Starbucks is going to be able to actually be possible that he's going to go in a stealth-like way. What's going to happen is he's going to be going in there and trying to... It could even be like a low-level corporate espionage piece. That's how staff are going to see it. The actual headline should be that he's spending $1 billion on training, development, and actually staff pay wages. That should be the headline, as opposed to, you know, that he's going to be having photos taken in stores, because that's the reality of what he's going to be doing. He's not actually going to be there from I want to learn and get in with the team.
Alex, it is possible this could just be a cynical selfie opportunity, isn't it?
I mean, partially it is. I mean, almost all marketing and PR is a cynical marketing PR tool. Let's be honest. That is the point of marketing. It's a little bit self-serving. I think what you just said about, I totally agree. You know, £1 billion on staff training, paying living wage, not minimum wage. Those are critical things. But if he goes there and sees how difficult minimum wage jobs can be and the facilities that go with it and the breaks and such like, and just the civility of being caring enough that you want to meet junior staff and see what their jobs are like. I do agree that the specific shop he's in a giant like Starbucks is going to make very little difference, but it might change how he feels when he's in a board meeting and they're discussing do they want to pay living wage versus minimum wage. That might be the subtle difference that makes him go, gosh, these people have a tough life, they work incredibly hard, they're the front line, and paying them a few pounds extra an hour changes their lives. That might make that difference. So from that point, even if the reason it started was a marketing ploy, the reality is it might have a positive effect. Certainly for me, it makes me realise how difficult, being a waiting staff, being on the front line of the public is, and that people who do that job need a huge amount of respect. And I try to remember it when I'm in the boardroom, so to speak. I'm not sure I always will. My staff will probably tell you when you're next to my restaurant.
Yeah, and Pamela, what would you say if you're not going to do it this way, by being on the front line, working there with the troops? What way would you recommend bosses to get involved with their companies, to learn more about their companies, to know what makes those companies tick?
I think there's a great thing around real active listening sessions, actually bringing the people up, getting people into the boardroom. So if you want to get a barista into the boardroom, they're going to tell you exactly how it is.
Oh, so you do it in reverse?
I do it in reverse, yeah. Right. Let's bring the people up. Let's bring them into the decision-making rooms. Let's actually listen to them and see what the reality is. Starbucks has got a really transient workforce. Alex has probably got the similar in terms of in the hospitality space. These guys are worried about accommodation. They're worried about the gig economy. They're worried about sick pay. They're worried about all those types of things. Actually serving the customers. If you look on, Indeed and reviews of working, they love serving the customers. They love the hustle and bustle of being on the high street in the, middle of London, etc. What they're worried about is where they're going to live, how they're going to be able to find time to study, how they're going to be able to pay their bills, and having some free drinks on shift. That, is always like a bit of a perk, but actually having someone sitting around a table and listening to those type of things, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to make some coffees with you, aren't I great?
Yeah.
That would be the way.
Alex, what do you think about turning it on its head? I mean, there could also be an argument for sort of mentoring and, giving inspiration to up-and-coming staff who may have aspirations to become a CEO one day and see what it's like at the very top, and actually perhaps to see that being a CEO is a tough job.
Yeah, I mean, those are all completely fair points. I literally think you can't really do enough of this. I mean, I am lucky. The hospitality industry is one of the rare ones where you see very rapid progression from very junior jobs to quite senior jobs. We try and promote from within, and we try to think that the very hackneyed phrase, the university of life, is just as important as a university education. So I tend to feel that promotion rapidly and people seeing that staff that maybe are quite young can get promoted to being a supervisor, to being a floor manager, to becoming a general manager. Sorry, my phone is slipping this morning. Matters enormously. And I think getting people into the office and seeing people who actually will enjoy an office environment, thinking that they are capable of doing that because they're sharp, they're hardworking, and they want to do better, is incredibly important. And businesses that do that, the ex-CEO of McDonald's was one of those, an extraordinary chap. Sadly, I believe he ended up in all sorts of trouble, but he came from the floor in Britain of a McDonald's shop and became the CEO of one of the biggest global corporations in the world. And I think that's an incredibly good story. That's when capitalism works, when it isn't seen as a crony thing, and it's seen as a real thing where talent works. And I personally passionately believe in that and agree on what you were saying.
And I think that's the thing. There are some really great businesses out there that do this sort of, that actually are on the ground. You look at the likes of B&Q, Homebase, their retail directors, their board members, they've got uniforms on the shop floor. They're actually helping to serve customers, but in a way that's actually authentic, in a way that actually helps to build the culture of the business, in that we are all striving towards the same thing, as opposed to a big PR exercise of, I'm going to do this once a month. Make it part of your overall work ethos, make it part of the overall culture. That makes it a bit different than one day a month I'm going to go and be a barista.
Well, it sounds as though we've kind of reached a bit of consensus on this debate. With that, we say goodbye. Thank you very much for giving us your thoughts. Alex Proud, entrepreneur, and Pamela Ray Welsh, online visibility specialist and CEO.
Thank you both. I do have this thing, though, about, bosses, particularly in our business of TV and independent companies, who are brought in from outside industry, and they haven't a clue, they haven't a feel, they haven't any warmth, they haven't any empathy towards the product that they are creating for viewers and for listeners. So I don't think it's enough that you could run a baked beans factory one week or an airline company or whatever, and then come in and be responsible for TV.
Roles, look, stay with us. Coming up, hundreds of children are being treated for video game addiction. We're discussing this with Norman Baker and Emily Carver next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rumors. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back.
Time 7:37. Welcome back, and we've got the newspapers for you this morning, going through those. Norman Baker and Emily Carver.
Emily, we're going to start with the story in the front of the Times about children addicted to video games and the number of adults that have been attacked by their children who've become so addicted that the families have had to hide their consoles, and then the children have gone crazy, and so much so that the emergency services have been called.
Yes, children are becoming very aggressive, apparently, when they're told not to play their video games any longer. They're also threatening, well, there are cases, I'm not saying this is every child out there, but there are cases of children threatening to kill themselves if their game console is taken away from them, if they're not allowed to play again. But anyway, this is apparently becoming a big issue within the NHS. There are various facilities that have been set up to tackle this problem. It's very much seen as an addiction, and it particularly is for children and teenagers who will play games all day. There's also a link to lockdown because children were at home. They weren't seeing their friends. They weren't necessarily outside doing sports and other activities. So they spent all their time playing video games. Now, the offending video games are Minecraft, Fortnite, FIFA and Call of Duty. Those are the ones most popular.
Not Pokemon.
Not Pokemon,
which is your favourite.
Which is what I used to play. I used to play Pokemon on my little Nintendo. But no, children are apparently playing for up to 14 hours a day. They won't get off it. They won't go to school.
I'm sorry, I actually think that's just parental...
Well, it's neglect, isn't it?
Neglect. Yeah. And they have no one but themselves to blame if they're allowing their children. They are children, clues in the name, that no child should be playing a screen game 14 hours.
So they've been given cognitive behavioural therapy at this new clinic that's opened in Earl's Court, which is in southwest London. They're being weaned off, so going from 14 hours to 2 hours a day. That's the aim.
It's still too much.
It's too much, but it's better than 14.
Well, I tell you that there's no escape, Emily. You go to the cinema, you turn on the television, and apparently the latest thing is that they make a series or a film like Dungeons and Dragons, which has just been released, off a game. Harry Potter being another one. The Last of Us is a big series on Sky at the moment as well. So they dramatise what these kids see in the games as well.
Well, I remember, it does become an obsession. I remember my brother used to get up very, very early in the morning to snatch an hour or so on the Nintendo or PlayStation, I think it was. And it can be a sociable thing to do. It can be, there are educational games as well, but it does seem to be becoming a serious issue.
Norman, I'm guessing you're not tempted. And
by video games?
Yeah.
No, and in fact, I'm come from the generation where when you were on holiday from school, you got turfed out of the house at 9 o'clock in the morning and told not to come back till 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And you went down the park and you played football and did other things out in the open air.
So you feel quite blessed that you're not addicted to something like that?
Yes, the addiction, it is an addiction. I think Emily's right on that. But, before we had video games, there were kids who were addicted to television. That's what happened before. But it comes down to parental enforcement, really. The kids should be told you can have an hour a day or whatever the limit is. They can choose the hour, maybe, if that's the limit. And otherwise, they have to get off the video games and off the television.
I think it's a difficult one to navigate as a parent because the school really encourages coding. It's this new big thing. Everyone's going to be some kind of quant in a hedge fund if they kids start coding at, say, age 6. As far as my son's concerned, he wants to do coding club because he gets his hands on a screen, which is just pure bliss for him. And I'm sort of fighting against it, but then I'm being told he should be doing it. And where do you draw the line between what's healthy and good for them educationally and what's not? And personally, if I could have my way, I'd scrap them all.
Well, it's iPads, isn't it? What do you think about iPads at the dinner table in restaurants?
Oh, for goodness sake.
Terrible.
No way.
Because that's what a lot of parents do, just give them an iPad screen.
No.
Give them a knife and fork and sit them down for a conversation.
Everything in moderation. If you need to do it because you're at a fancy restaurant and your kids are starving hungry and they won't stop screaming, fair enough, no judgment, but not every day. I think it's just not a good idea every day.
Moderation.
Yeah.
Norma, let's go to the Telegraph's one of the papers that cover this. Well, this woman at this private school in America, she's 28 years of age, and all those deaths.
Well, there's two shocking elements to this for me. The first is that she was armed with at least 2 assault-type rifles and a handgun. How is it possible that Americans allow people to buy assault rifles and semi-automatic guns? I mean, what is the purpose of those machines? It can't be for self-defence. But the other shocking statistic in this story is this. America has experienced 129 mass shootings this year already. We're into March. Mass shootings, 129. Why don't they do something about it?
Yeah, well, it's this constitution, isn't it? The right to bear arms.
Well, there's a difference between having. I mean, I don't agree with having guns at all, but if you have a gun at home, one gun at home for self-defence, that's one thing. Having assault rifles and machine guns.
Well, every time this happens, it goes through the same thing. You have, you know, Biden in this case coming out and saying something must be done, we must have more gun controls. Then you have the pro-gun lobby coming out and saying, no, it's your right under the Constitution. You know, it's safer to have a gun than to not have one, etc., etc. And it just goes round in circles.
That was exactly where it all unravels, the word lobby. And it's the lobby, the power of the lobbyists in America, and the way to run as president, you have to essentially be funded, because it's such a hugely costly campaign, to have a very wealthy backer in the form of some sort of lobby. And the NRA, as we all know, wields so much power, particularly for the Republicans. And Donald Trump absolutely swore blind, didn't he, that he was the one that would be able to, because he had the art of the deal, that he could change things with the NRA, and even Donald Trump couldn't persuade them to change their rules.
No, it's frightening. It is a power of the lobby, it's a power of money, and that's why the American political system is corrupt in that sense, that money talks. It's a great shame. But I prefer the British approach to the right to bear arms, which, as far as I'm concerned, means wearing a T-shirt.
Well, so although knife crime is on the rise...
and gun crime.
And gun crime.
OK. Emily, Mail. Labour plunged into fresh turmoil last night. Why?
Well, Eamonn, I don't know if you're on Twitter much, but...
Sorry, I'm amongst the top 10 journalists on Twitter on a chart released yesterday, so, you know,
look, I've got it here.
I know you've got a tremendous number of followers, obviously, but whether
May I just point out he has 1,105,000 followers on Twitter, guys.
But I don't know if Eamonn bothers looking at what other people are tweeting about, because Momentum and the far left are very much... agitating. They're agitating because they're very angry that Keir Starmer has blocked Jeremy Corbyn from running as a Labour candidate in his Islington seat. He's saying he's going to run as an independent.
Well, he's refusing to confirm it, as far as I'm aware.
Well, I mean, it seems to be that he's decided... Friends have said that he's decided to run as an independent, what that means. But anyway, there's a vote today. The NEC, which is MPs, trade unionists, councillors, etc., party members, will vote on whether Keir Starmer was right to block him. So he may well, you know, he does still have supporters, Jeremy Corbyn does, within the party, so he may well be able to be a Labour candidate after all, but we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, many of his supporters are in the front bench, the shadow front bench, aren't they?
Well, it's worth remembering, of course, that Keir Starmer was happy enough to campaign for Jeremy Corbyn to become the Prime Minister, so it's a bit much, perhaps.
I think this is very unhealthy, this story, because this is Starmer deliberately picking on Corbyn. I'm not a fan of Corbyn, by the way, but picking on Corbyn in order to establish a position, which is he is not Corbyn. That's what this is about. And Corbyn's almost caught in the crossfire. But from a constituency point of view, I have to say that I think the people who should decide whether Corbyn stands or not are the constituency Labour Party and his constituency, not the National Executive. It's a local decision, it should be.
We look at this situation in the Conservative Party with the Prime Minister refusing to clamp down on MPs raking in cash by moonlighting with second jobs. I mean, he can't afford any enemies, the position that he's in, so he ain't going to do that, is he?
Well, no, he isn't going to do it, and a lot of... Most MPs who have got very well-paid second jobs are Conservatives, and that's why he doesn't want to do it. He wants to keep his Conservative MPs happy. But, you know, he says it strikes... This is a phrase in the paper. It strikes the right balance to the rules at the moment. To be fair to these MPs who were caught by this kind of South Korean sting, they all behaved properly and, I think, and declared that they had to follow the rules and so on. But the issue is, how can you represent your constituency when you're busy out there working for somebody else and devoting hours to a company in South Korea, which is what they're apparently prepared to do. I know from my time as an MP, it was a full-time job. I worked probably 70 hours a week. How can you find time to do these things as well?
Do you think you were paid enough?
I was paid all right.
I think perhaps we need to pay them more because these are highly ambitious people, the majority of them, which is why they got into their position, and they know full well that they could be making more money on the in the private sector or
yes,
wherever.
But there are so many compensations for being an MP. It's a fantastic job, and I was happy to not be paid more in order to do the job I was doing because I enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah, highlight some of those compensations then, because they're not talked about enough, really. I mean, all the perks that MPs get, including their allowances for second homes, it's not so discounted bars in Westminster.
It's not so much. It's not so much the money, actually, Isabel. It's more the ability, for example, to meet people you wouldn't otherwise meet. You know, I met some really interesting people when I was an MP, whether in this country or abroad. People would never ever have met before. If legally and locally, you get to invited to, for example, open a photographic exhibition, and the photographers there will take you to one side and tell you what they were doing and why they framed their particular pictures the way they did, because you are the person who was there opening the exhibition. So you get to meet all these people and you learn about life in a way you wouldn't do. I mean, being an MP is life magnified, and that's why it's worth doing.
OK. Guys, you'll be doing this again in 40 minutes' time. For the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Just quickly, have any of you been to Finland?
I haven't been to Finland. I've been to Sweden and Iceland and Norway.
Emily?
No, only Iceland out of those.
Oh, we need to be educated then.
No, that's why they're so happy. No one visits them.
Yeah, maybe.
They're so happy because there's nobody
Not
there.
inundated with tourists.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be talking about Finland in just a moment, but first of all, with the time coming up to 10 to 8, let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
Humza Yousaf is set to become Scotland's next First Minister after defeating his rivals to the SNP leadership. The 37-year-old will become the youngest to win the job and first to come from an ethnic minority.
The Prime Minister is to be grilled by senior MPs on post-Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland today. The Commons Liaison Committee will question Rishi Sunak on his Windsor framework, newly signed with the EU, despite opposition from the DUP and a small number of Tories.
The bookmakers William Hill will pay a total of £19.2 million for widespread and alarming social responsibility and anti-money laundering failures, the Gambling Commission has announced. The settlement is the largest in the Gambling Commission's history.
Oh, Finland, have you been there? And what did you think of it? Because it's been named the world's happiest country, not for the first time, not for the second time, but for the which?
6th year in a row. The UN World Happiness Report put the Scandinavian country at top of the list. The UK is, where is it, Isabel?
19th.
19th.
We've gone down a place.
19th, OK. Here's Heli Jimenez from the Finnish Tourist Board. Heli, good morning to you. Congratulations once again.
Good morning. Thank you.
Heli, why is your country so good?
Well, we feel that the happiness is about the people who are content with their lives. And of course, our Nordic way of life gives a good infrastructure of happiness for everybody here. So what we feel that our social system, such as healthcare and education, human rights, are the things that are important for the people, and this kind of infrastructure allows people to make their own decision. It works like a framework for the happiness and lets people to make their own life decisions here.
Of corruption, so presumably low levels of corruption there, generosity, sort of community sense, a freedom to make life choices, healthy life expectations, social support and GDP per capita. So that's why Finland is ranking so highly. But tell me, is it a misconception? I mean, here in the UK, we often think about some of the Scandinavian countries as having high suicide rates, perhaps high divorce rates. Is that a mistruth?
It's not a mistruth in a way. Of course, we have our problems also, and statistics are showing that. But what comes to, for example, to the suicide rates, they are going down, fortunately, all the time. And of course, we are facing similar problems that anybody in the world. But we also have a good framework to work it out, and a good networks for people who need help.
But you see, the thing is, we're seeing lovely sunsets and sunrises there, Helly. But it is dark quite a lot of the time, and that's bound to affect the way people think. I mean, I've never been, Isabel's never been. We're just curious as to, you know, what all the attraction is. Certainly the country looks absolutely beautiful, and you're describing it very, very well. But isn't it overly dark?
It is dark. That is one of our... it's a fact. We have a certain period of year it's dark. We have quite extremes here. We either have a lot of light throughout the night also, or then almost complete darkness. And of course it affects to people, but we here Finns are quite, of course, used to that one, but also we make it work. So we do other things when it's dark.
Now, Helly, what things would Isabel and I do when we come to Finland? What would you put on our itinerary, our agenda? What are the must-see things, the must-do experiences?
If you come in the summer, of course, the phenomenon of light here, but definitely our lakeside, our clean waters, our clean air, and our vast nature, what we have here. So those would be on your top list to visit and do here. We have a lot of activities to do with the nature, and it is not something that it's quite extreme, so anybody can go there.
Selling it.
Lovely, beautiful. Thank you very much. We're just is that snow behind you that we're seeing?
Well, we have had a new snowstorm here in Helsinki also last night, so we have quite a lot of snow at the moment.
Very good. That's Helly Jimenez. She's from the tourist board there. Finland, the happiest place in the world, in the whole world, for the 6th consecutive year. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's based apparently on a 3-year average of all of those factors, and I do wonder if they'll hold it next year because, of course, they're on the border with Russia. And they've had all those worries. They were invaded by Russia previously. They're very defensive and paranoid about all of that. Got a huge underground network. I wonder if Putin is going to affect their rankings. Anyway.
Trust you to put a downer on everything.
I'm just, you know, I'm interested in more geopolitics.
Let the people just enjoy what's going on.
Russia, it's not me, it's Putin. Putin's ruining it.
And loveliness and sunsets and...
Just keeping it real.
Do they have saunas? Are they the ones that do saunas where they whip you with leaves?
I don't know about whipping, but certainly lots of saunas.
Well, they beat you. I'd love to have a sauna with you.
Yeah.
And I'd have a branch.
Yeah, I think I'll be avoiding that.
Anyway, we're going to be back after the break. Don't go away.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A dry and, in some places, chilly start, but a lot of cloud across the UK. Rain is already arriving into western parts, and that rain will sweep across the rest of the country during the rest of the day. Low pressure increasingly in charge of our weather over the next few days, that low sitting to the west, bringing southwesterly winds. That means mild air, but also moist air, and we're certainly going to see a lot of moisture in the atmosphere during the rest of the day. So by late morning, the rain reaching parts of central and eastern Scotland, falling as snow over the hills for a time before it's just rain, and it's going to be a damp afternoon for the vast majority. A lot of cloud, that cloud sitting on the hills in the west as well, so quite gloomy out there. And it's going to feel cold, I think, especially in the east and northeast, where the cloud comes in after a cold start to the day. But Northern Ireland, the exception. Here, 14 Celsius is possible because the sun's going to break through by the afternoon, albeit with some heavy showers. And those showers will push into western Scotland, parts of northwest England, North Wales, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere as well. But the main area of persistent rains moved through by the early hours of Wednesday. And a lot of cloud remains, I think, as well as a breeze. So it's going to be a frost-free night. Temperatures in most places staying at 8 to 11 Celsius. But it is a cloudy start to Wednesday, and there's more wet weather lining up to come in during the morning. That's going to affect parts of southwest England into Wales, Northern Ireland, as well as northwest England and the Midlands by lunchtime. Further north, some cloud breaks, some sunny spells coming through, and it's going to feel much milder all of a sudden. 15, 16, perhaps even 17 Celsius. We keep that mild air on Thursday, a mixture of sunny spells and heavy showers on Thursday, and then the potential on Friday for some very wet and windy weather, especially in the south.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Holyrood on a collision course with Westminster as Humza Yousaf prepares to become First Minister of Scotland.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 8. It's Tuesday, the 28th of March. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thanks for your company, leading the news this morning. The new leader of the SNP has vowed to resurrect the controversial gender reforms that brought down Nicola Sturgeon as he prepares to be formally confirmed as Scotland's new First Minister. The pledge puts him on course for a legal clash with Westminster, which previously vetoed the proposal.
Landlords will be able to evict tenants, causing disruption within 2 weeks as part of the government's new plan to tackle antisocial behaviour. Under the proposals, drug use, drunken behaviour and excessive noise will be grounds for eviction.
The Governor of the Bank of England has blamed early retirement for high interest rates and rising inflation. The warning from Andrew Bailey comes after the Chancellor's budget, in which Jeremy Hunt launched a series of proposals to get people back to work.
6 people, including 3 children under 9, have been killed in a school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. The 28-year-old shooter, a transgender ex-student, was killed by police at the scene.
Day 2 of a high-profile court case into alleged phone tapping by the publisher of the Daily Mail. Yesterday, the Duke of Sussex made a surprise appearance alongside Sir Elton John, who's also bringing legal action against associated newspapers.
And we will be live there this hour. And we love to hear from you throughout the course of the programme. Keep those thoughts coming in on email and on Twitter.
Lead story this morning, Hamza Yusuf on course for a clash with Rishi Sunak over controversial Scottish gender legislation as he prepares to be confirmed as the country's new First Minister.
So the 37-year-old has pledged to challenge Westminster's veto of the reforms which, as we know, contributed to the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon.
Labour and the Conservatives now believe they can capitalise on his victory with 20 seats up for grabs in the wake of a damaging leadership contest for the SNP.
Well, let's get the latest now from political commentator Ian McWhirter, who joins us from Edinburgh. Good morning to you. First of all, a few hoops to jump through. He's still got to be voted through as First Minister in Holyrood today. Do you think that will be plain sailing?
Yeah, that's a foregone conclusion, because the coalition partners of the SNP, the Greens, have said, yeah, they welcome his election as leader and they will back him. So there's no doubt that he will become First Minister later on today. Then all the problems begin.
And the problems, I mean, they seem quite obvious, Ian. They're looking up, and you mentioned gender reform, and you'd be thinking, stay away from that. And I don't know if it's a plus or a minus being associated with independence either. What's your take?
Well, I mean, he's appears to be going ahead with this rather futile attempt to challenge the UK government's Section 35 block on the gender recognition reform bill. Now, the reason they imposed that block was because this bill, which introduces self-ID for trans people, it means that they can change their legal sex without any medical intervention, without living for 2 years in their chosen gender, all these things. You change your legal sex just by announcing it, essentially. Now, the UK government has pointed out that this could conflict with the 2010 Equality Act, at least as in terms of its protections for women, girls in single-sex spaces. So this is an immensely controversial issue. It has divided the SNP from top to bottom. It's profoundly unpopular in Scotland, with 2/3 of voters opposed to the idea of allowing people to change legal sex at 16. And I don't think anybody seriously thinks that the UK Supreme Court, were it ultimately to rule on this, would back the Scottish government, because it is the UK Supreme Court for a start. The equalities laws are UK-wide, and this is a specifically Scottish piece of legislation which would obviously seriously interact with it. And moreover, above all, and one of the reasons that Nicola Sturgeon resigned so precipitately last month was, of course, the self-ID policy, as applied in Scottish prisons, led to a male-bodied double rapist, Isla Bryson, being placed in a women's prison. So this is a really difficult nut to crack.
Yeah, look, a really difficult nut to crack, highly controversial, and as you say, shows what a broad church the SNP is, and its only really uniting sort of policy was independence. Perhaps why first, straight out of the blocks, Hamza's also going to be resubmitting a Section 30 to call for another referendum. And hey, it's better to do that than to focus on perhaps some of their track record on things like health and justice and education.
Well, here we already know what the result is, because Nicola Sturgeon tried to press for this Section 30 order for an early independence referendum. She took it to the Supreme Court, and surprise, surprise, the Supreme Court said, no, you don't. You don't have the power. As a Scottish Parliament, you do not have the power to introduce a referendum on independence, because the Constitution is an area reserved to Westminster. Westminster has to agree to that, and there is absolutely no way that Westminster is going to agree to an early referendum on independence, a Section 30 order on independence. And that's been made absolutely clear, not just by Rishi Sunak, but also by the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, who may well be Prime Minister in 18 months' time. So again, he has sort of set himself up to fail here with yet another futile legal assault on UK law. And, I mean, these are the things he sort of had to say to try to win the leadership. The other participants in this contest have seen the problems here, particularly on gender reform, and they said, well, look, this is unpopular legislation. We've got to take it away and rethink it, and it was futile for the sake of it, to take on the UK government on such a contentious issue. So he's really set himself up here to fail.
Though the party must have liked it, Ian, and the fact. What do you make of his age? I mean, his wee bones are hardly formed. He's 37 years of age, so young. What do you make of his age and relative lack of experience?
Well, for those of us in our twilight years, he may seem rather young, but he is 37, and he's been knocking around a long time, and he's been a minister since 2012. So he's one of the most experienced ministers in the entire cabinet. I mean, as far as having the support of the Scottish National Party, I mean, they don't like the gender reform legislation very much either. I mean, the SNP has just lost a third of its membership, 30,000 since 2021, as we discovered during the chaotic leadership election. A lot of these people we know left because they couldn't thole, as we see up here, this idea that anybody, criminals can just change their legal sex by announcing it. I mean, it is enormously controversial in the SNP as well as in the country. Yeah. And also, look, his results, his victory is a very, very thin one, because he only won by 52% to 48%. So that's nearly half of the SNP membership were actually voting for people, and particularly Kate Forbes, who would have scrapped this bill and would have parked independence as well. I mean, at least to the extent of agreeing that the Scottish public is not ready for independence, and the argument has not been properly won.
Oh, don't bring up 52-48 again. We'll go down that road.
I know, exactly.
Listen, you talk about the 30,000 SNP members who have left the party. Look, the front page of the Times says that Labour's very much licking their lips, eyeing up a few more votes at the next election. Do you think the Conservatives could actually make some gains as well, perhaps around Aberdeen and the Highlands and Islands?
I mean, it's obviously possible. I mean, anything is possible now, really. For the SNP, this has been a tremendous shock to it. It is very divided. Things were said during this election campaign which can't be unsaid. Humza Yousaf's personal record in government was really savaged by Kate Forbes, who is, after all, the finance secretary. And she said basically he couldn't make the trains run on time, he lost the plot on the police, and he's completely useless in the health service. So, I mean, if he performs as many of his colleagues, even in the SNP, expect him to, and things go wrong pretty fast, and I think they're going to go wrong on Article 35, on Article 30, they're going to go wrong on the deposit return scheme, which is due to kick in and has been boycotted by thousands of small businesses in Scotland. I mean, perhaps by some miracle he might be able to negotiate his way through all these things. It seems highly unlikely. So it could well be that the opposition party, the Scottish Conservatives, might pick up a vote or two here. Though I suspect what will happen, Labour will probably be the beneficiaries, because remember then the first election that's going to come up is probably a general election in about a year's time. And it looks as if Keir Starmer, the Labour Party, it looks as if they could well be on course to win that election. And I think probably a lot of Scottish voters will think that's a reason for voting Labour rather than for voting Tory. I mean, there are a lot of Tory voters in Scotland. Yeah. There are a lot of Brexiteers in Scotland. You never hear about them. But the Tory party is in a pretty bad way, and it's Labour who seems to be having the momentum at the moment.
Thanks, Ian. Really appreciate it. Ian McWhirter is a political commentator, new First Minister to be appointed at Holyrood in Edinburgh today. Thank you, Ian. Let's now speak to our political editor, that's Darren McCaffrey, for his thoughts on the upcoming session. Darren.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Eamonn. What do you want me to talk about? Scotland?
Let's talk a little bit about Rishi Sunak, because he's going to be facing MPs today, isn't he, in this liaison committee showdown. It happens a few times a year, but what's interesting, I suppose, is that Sir Bernard Jenkin, who last week seemed to rattle Boris Johnson a little bit, who'll be leading things for the Prime Minister today as well.
Yeah, indeed, and this committee happens, every 6 months, where the Prime Minister gets questioned by some of those senior MPs in Parliament, the chairs, effectively, of the different select committees. Those are committees that shadow the different government departments, whether that's education, health, the Treasury, for example, and it can normally be quite a tough affair. Effectively, it lasts for around 90 minutes. Sometimes it can go on a hell of a lot longer, and the Prime Minister has to be across the briefs of different government policy. Now, you would have thought that's his job, but in the full scrutiny, not just of Parliament, but indeed people watching on TV, it can be, as I say, rather intense. In saying that, you would have thought, actually, Rishi Sunak should be pretty comfortable in this field. Whatever one thinks about the Prime Minister, he does appear to be across the detail on most policy areas, and I suspect, actually, it may well turn into a bit of a snooze fest, given the fact that he is across detail. Yes, there'll be probing questions, not just from his own backbenchers, I'm sure, on things like the small boats crisis, on the state of the economy, and indeed on strikes, which are still expected to continue into the spring. But ultimately, I think in the end, Isabel, Rishi Sunak will probably get through this unscathed unless there are any big surprises. Boris Johnson used to kind of bluster his way through these affairs, sometimes getting a little agitated. I don't think we're going to see that this afternoon. All kicks off at 3 o'clock.
Last week we were billing the showdown with Boris Johnson as box office. Today, Rishi Sunak's hearing is being described as a snooze fest. Darren, with that, thank you very much. OK, the time coming up to 8:15. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories. 3 children and 3 members of staff have died after a shooting at a private Christian school in Tennessee in the United States. Nashville police shot and killed the 28-year-old transgender shooter who was armed with at least 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun. The price of groceries has hit another record high, adding up to £837 a year. Analysis shows supermarket inflation hit 17.5% this month. That's up from 17.1% in February. An extra £2.5 billion in funding will be given to schools and colleges to upgrade their buildings. It's after unions said action must be taken to ensure buildings at risk of collapse are made safe. OK, stay with us. We'll be discussing that old firm headbutt last night between Rangers coach Craig McPherson and the Celtic head coach Fran Alonso. Paul Coyte's got the details next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's
wink,
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
90 minutes past 8 o'clock. A very good morning to you on this Tuesday. Eamonn and Isabel, breakfast here on GB News. Thank you for your company.
Now, up next, they are the youngest girl group to have a UK number with their... number 1, perhaps, with their song C'est la vie. At 8:45, Bewitched will be here in the studio telling us about their brand new single.
After 9 o'clock, she's giving her take on the lawsuit against the Daily Mail. Legendary tabloid editor Eve Pollard will be here as we enter day 2 of the case, and you can join in. A lot of you on this one saying, Prince Harry, Penny, good morning, Penny. Prince Harry's happy to leak stories about his family, but gets upset when the press does it about him. David said they sought publicity, got it, made a fortune, now they want privacy. But a lot of this is historic. A lot of this is historic, it has to be said. This guy will do anything to make money as well as the others involved. I hope this case is thrown out. But you can't say that, Debbie. You can't say that if they have obtained information, if they've snooped into people's private lives, if they've stolen medical records. There surely has to be a case to be answered if all of those accusations are proven true.
I've had lots of messages in about Finland. Jamie says Finland's a really cool place. Spent some time in Helsinki with work and loved it. The weather was bleak, though, but I had the best steak dinner ever. And Pixie says Finland is atmospheric because of the natural scape, the clean air, but gentle, safe. And everything works because of common sense regarding infrastructure. I could easily live there. So you all seem to be loving Finland. And apparently you can visit Father Christmas there. Janet says she went there, had a fabulous week.
I know, so why haven't you done me? I told you
Husky
could visit.
doggies, midnight trek across frozen lakes.
Have you ever been huskied? Have you ever been
I've never
pulled
been
by a
husky
dog?
doggying. I'd love to do that.
Like, you won't. They smell of poo.
Oh, stop it.
Right, so the dogs in front of you, they're all excitable. There's 8, 10, 12 dogs or so in front of you. They get so excited, what do? They poo, right? They poo.
How do you manage
and there's
to
a difference.
ruin everything?
Horse poo smells nice, right? Dog poo does not smell nice because they eat meat and things. I'm just telling you.
You've just ruined Christmas.
No, I'm just telling you. When you do your husky dog ride, you're just going to smell dog.
Well, I've
dog
scrapped
poo.
it. I've taken it off the bucket list now. It sounds disgusting.
We'll bring you to court now. Ellie Costello, day 2 of this high-profile case into alleged phone tapping by the publisher of the Daily Mail. Ellie, what have you got to report? What's going to happen today?
Well, good morning to you, Eamonn and Isabel. And wow, day 1 was totally star-studded here at the High Court. Biggest surprise from Prince Harry. Nobody even knew he was in the UK, but he flew 6,000 miles or so from his home in California to be here for day 1 of this preliminary hearing. Now, none of the high-profile claimants in this case had to be here. Of course, this isn't a trial. This is just the preliminary hearing. But we saw Prince Harry make his way through the front door of the High High Court yesterday with so much confidence, in fact, that he bumped into a paparazzi. And later on, Sir Elton John joined the courtroom at lunchtime. He made his way through a side entrance, and the actress Sadie Frost was also here at the High Court. She was sat just 2 seats away from Prince Harry, and the Duke of Sussex spent yesterday in the courtroom making notes on a black notepad. He also shook his head several times at the barrister who was representing the Associated Publishers. They are the publishers of the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday and the Mail Online, seemingly disagreeing with a lot of what was being said on the other side of things. But what was said in the courtroom yesterday? Well, they are accusing these high-profile claimants, they're accusing the Associated Newspapers of major breaches of privacy, including illegal information gathering. And David Sherborne, who's the barrister representing Prince Harry, Sir Elton John and the like, he said that all 7 of the claimants had been victims of unlawful acts by these publishers. That includes breaking an entry into private property, the bugging of phones and cars and homes. We saw in written submissions yesterday that the actress Liz Hurley had her phone bugged, and Hugh Grant, the actor who she was with at the time, had a microphone put in his car. They also claim that private investigators were hired to obtain medical information from private hospitals by deception, and bank accounts and bank statements were also accessed, they allege, through illicit means and manipulation. We heard some of the detail on how it impacted on the celebrities as well. Sir Elton John and his husband David Furnish, we were told in court yesterday that they were frightened, and as a result they had someone watching cameras in their home every single night. And in written arguments we heard that Liz Hurley was left shocked and mortified by her alleged targeting. Prince Harry's details were also revealed in written submissions. We heard how he felt paranoid throughout his teenage years as a result of some of the articles that were printed in the Associated Newspapers. He believed that it must be someone close to him who was giving this information to the media. Well, in response, Associated Newspapers have strongly denied all of the allegations. They've described them as preposterous smears. They've also said it's too late to bring any claims. They say some of them are stale, bearing in mind that some of the articles that are going to be brought into court are 30 years old. So it's clear that they are going to fight this tooth and nail. They want it to be thrown out, but I think seeing Prince Harry, Sadie Frost and Sir Elton John all there on day 1 of this preliminary hearing shows the strength of feeling on this, and they want this taken to a full trial.
Thank you, Ellie. All of those stories made front page news. Yeah. We're going to look at the back page news on this Tuesday morning. The Express, first of all, it discusses the Tottenham bid for manager Julian Nagelsmann following Antonio Conte's sacking over the weekend. This is I don't know what this is. Next one. Okay, that's the next one, whatever that is. It's one of the posh ones. It's The Guardian. Southgate has said he is unwilling to rest his players at the end of the season. And we now move on to the Mail. It reports on Saka's new deal with Arsenal, 300 grand a week. Don't know how the lad can live on that, but there we go. Paul Coit with me now. OK, where do you want to begin, Paul?
I'll tell you what I want to begin with, is horse poo. Do you ever walk on that? Because my dad always used to say to me, the first football game I ever went to, and he said, son, if you walk in the horse poo, it's good luck.
I think your dad's right.
Yeah. We lost 3-0, but I still do it. I still do it to this day.
You don't scoop it up and put it in a bag and take it home for manure?
No.
It's very good for gardens.
Is it really? No, I didn't do that. But I did walk in it for luck, but I didn't have any luck. But I still do it even to this day.
OK.
Even on the way here today, Eamonn.
So are Spurs going to have any luck with the new manager?
Right, well, we'll have to see. As you say, Julian Nagelsmann, he was the name we were talking about yesterday, who was the Bayern Munich manager up till last week. He's the top of Spurs' list. See, the interesting thing is that he wants Champions League, I would imagine, and there's been we would call it a soft approach. So there's been a little contact between them. He wants Champions League, and Spurs will have to get Champions League probably to get him, but they would need him to help them get Champions League, if you see what I
Chicken
mean.
and egg, yeah.
It's pretty much chicken and egg. So he's the favourite at the moment. So I think he's probably going to be the good bet, and that's the guy that the club wants, and I think a lot of the fans as well.
OK, let's look at the Euro qualifiers last night. Hard luck to Ireland.
It's not a bad result, is it? I mean, I know they lost, but Republic of Ireland losing 1-0 to France, an amazing goal by Benjamin Pavard, whose birthday is today as well. Tonight, Scotland got 3 points in their last game. They play Spain, so they'll do extremely well to get anything out of that. Wales play Latvia. It's the Gareth Bale farewell. Now, Gareth is going to be flying over from LA. I don't know whether he flew along with Harry on the way over, but he's going to be there. So they're going to make a presentation to him with a thanks to everything that he's done for Welsh football. Do you remember the Wales Golf Madrid flag that he was handed that caused so much trouble?
Yeah.
Because the flag that he was handed, it said Wales Golf Madrid, in that order, and then people in Madrid are saying he doesn't care about us, but that's pretty much how it was, and it ended up that way. So he's going to be there as well.
So it's presentation only. He's not donning a kit. No,
he won't be donning a kit. No, he's retired now, and then he's done. So there's still talk that whether he could have been involved in the coaching, but I'm not sure.
There's an Old Firm game tonight between the women.
Well, actually, I tell you what, it was yesterday, and there was problems yesterday. Now, it was 1-0 to Rangers, and it went on and on. It went to the 99th minute. Celtic then managed to score an equaliser. Now, the Celtic manager, Fran Alonso, Spaniard, goes absolutely bananas, running up and down the touchline. He's screaming, he's going crazy, he's punching his chest, which then annoyed Rangers. I mean, it's an old firm derby, for crying out loud. So then at the end of the game, the whistle goes soon afterwards. Then there's the handshake, and then Craig McPherson, who's the Rangers' assistant manager, walks up from behind and gives him, I don't know whether you can see that there. It looks like he's leaning forward, but it's a very slight Glasgow kiss that he's actually given him on the back of the head. Then the players have all got involved. It all started getting a bit nasty. Apparently, he called him a little rat, which is, I don't know, it's like a James Cagney thing. Not a very nice thing to say.
Rat.
You dirty rat. So anyway, called him a little rat. But apparently, Fran Alonso has said, well, you know, it's one of those things. A little bit of emotion is shown. I hardly felt it, which I don't know is an insult there to Craig McPherson, but everything hopefully will then blow over. But it was all a bit of a trouble.
Major League Cricket makes American debut in Texas this summer.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to go down. Cricket in America, if you've ever tried to explain cricket to anybody from the States...
Well, have you ever tried to explain baseball or American football to us?
It works both ways, because there's Major League Baseball is going to happen in this country in the summer. They've done it before, and that's going to happen at the London Stadium. So they've taken it over to the States because of the IPL, the Indian Premier League, which is so successful, it's a huge money spinner, but it's in India, and it's a religion, cricket over there, to take it over to America. So Jason Roy's been approached, and other players have been approached. They're saying they can earn about £200,000 to £300,000 to be playing cricket over there. But how it's going to work, because I just don't know whether there's going to be the interest in the States, but they're going to give it a go, see how it works. So huge contracts, and it's going to be the MLC, Major League Cricket, which is going to be over there.
Quick one looking ahead again to the summer pre-season friendly.
Yep.
Manchester United in action in America and USA against...
Wrexham.
Oh.
How'd Wrexham wangle that one?
I think you know how Wrexham happened.
Ryan Reynolds with his Stardust.
That's it, Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, and there's the Netflix documentary. So there's a lot of Americans suddenly extremely interested now in Wrexham. I don't know whether they realise how small they are. They're hoping they might be able to get out of non-league to League Two, but then playing Manchester United. So a very tricky game over in the States for Manchester United.
Maybe Ryan Reynolds and Rob should have bought Man United. You know,
maybe.
It's been up for sale recently.
Yeah, they could. Yeah,
or it still is. I'm not quite sure where we're at with that.
They wouldn't even
Can't afford it,
remotely
fair enough,
have the
but that would be a
resources for that. Right, so tell us about a quadruple salcho.
The Salcho, yeah. Now, we did mention this the other day about moves that are named
Crosby
after.
flop.
That's right. That's how it started with the death of Dick Fosbury. Now, the Salcho is basically the Salcho and the triple Salcho, which is a famous move from ice skating, which is where you take off with one foot with the inside edge of the skate, spin round 3 times, and then land on the other foot with the outside.
You're going to demonstrate this for us?
I think I pretty much demonstrated it there, but I don't think with the shoulder. But anyway, the very first First time it's happened in the World Championship, a quadruple Salchow.
Wow.
This is Ilya Klimkin from Russia. The first ever triple Salchow was 1955. The quadruple Salchow up 4 times in the air. Unbelievable.
Up 4 times.
Up 4 times, landed perfectly, and that happened at the World Championships at the weekend.
What a thing to behold.
The quadruple Salchow.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
It's a pleasure.
See you tomorrow.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Right, don't go anywhere. We're going to be discussing golf course criminals working their tricks on the green. Norman Baker and Emily Carver with the papers next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 8:36. Join us to go through the papers one last time. This morning is the former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and the columnist at Conservative Home and presenter here at GB News, Emily Carver.
So last time round, Emily, I was talking to you about the Andrew Bailey, Governor of the Bank of England, and his philosophy that retiring early, people who've retired early, they are to blame for higher interest rates. How come?
Well, he says that they're spending their savings. So there's too much money going after too few goods, which is one of the reasons why you get inflation. He also says it's had a massive impact on the labour market, making it well, even more difficult for companies to hire because they're losing those recruits. But I must say, I think this is a bit of a cheat coming from Andrew Bailey, because it is the Bank of England's, well, only job, really, to keep inflation under control, to keep it to their 2% target, and he has failed. And that's because of loose monetary policy, i.e. pumping lots of money, printing lots of money into the economy. It's also the consequence of lockdown. And it's the consequence of many other things, but I'm not really sure blaming it on the 132,000 people that have left the workforce is really fair. Norman?
I've got another explanation for this, which is profiteering. You see, some of the prices in supermarkets, food prices have gone up 17.5%. And I just looked at my local supermarket the other day. There used to be 4 cans of Heinz soup for £3. There's now 4 cans for £5 in a year. And you can mirror that in a whole range of products. There's people making money out of this at the moment.
But how much can we say that's down to rising? I agree with you, because some of the prices are just extraordinary. Things going up 200% in some supermarkets. But I guess energy costs when it comes to making tins of soup?
Not that much. I mean, they really have gone up. Some products remained the same in tins, with the same energy, presumably, and others have gone massively up.
So you think it's profiteering? You think it's to do with...
Well, I think there might be an element of profiteering, definitely. But I don't know.
think
but
it's early retirement?
Obviously, energy costs, I don't think it's early retirement that's having the big impact on inflation.
It's a problem for the government. I mean, the Chancellor is desperate to get the over-50s back to work, and I was reading something like 0.4% down on productivity, I think, which is problematic. And as you say, it means that they are paying more for some jobs that they just cannot fill, which is also inflationary.
He doesn't want the over-50s back if they're called Boris Johnson, mind you.
There's many, many factors, but I think the main issue is that we had interest rates so low for so long, we were pumping huge amounts of money into the economy, and, of course, we shut down parts of the economy for rather a long time.
OK. Financial Times, front page, Norman, Israel is the headline. What's going on?
Well, it's chaos in Israel, but actually I find that there's an element of a good story here, because what's happened is that huge numbers of people, tens of thousands of people in Israel, have been out for weeks defending a democracy. That's what they're doing. They're saying, we want a democratic country, we've got one, and you, Mr Netanyahu, are in danger of destroying it. So they've been defending their country.
Well, except he hasn't cancelled the reforms,
he's
just delayed them, and therefore potentially he's just prolonging the paralysis that the country's been thrown into as a result of all of these protests.
Well,
if he was, had any shred of dignity, surely he should quit over all of this.
Well, he should do. I mean, look, the reason he's doing this is because, first of all, he's in hock to some extreme right-wing parties within this coalition, and secondly, he wants to muzzle the judiciary because he's facing court cases himself. But I mean, the Israeli population has been extraordinary. Diplomats at Israeli embassies around the world have stopped working in protest. The airport was basically shut down. People have stopped turning out for military service. I mean, it is extraordinary the way people have reacted to this.
Yeah.
What's his explanation? Is it that he believes the Supreme Court has been holding him back from making various changes in general, general policy changes?
Yeah, well, he's saying the Supreme Court has got too much power to overrule the elected government. Well, I mean, there is a balance to be struck in any society, as we have in our society, between, the Parliament, the executive, and the courts. I mean, that's the balance that has to exist in a democracy.
You're talking about, embassies around the country standing up on this issue, but the former Israeli ambassador to the UK, Mark Regev, has been speaking this morning, and he's been defending Netanyahu, saying that actually all of these plans were part of his re-election campaign last year, and that he has a mandate to bring in these reforms, even if they are, frankly, authoritarian.
Well, he hasn't got a mandate because he's relying on a whole range of other parties to put together a ragtag and bobtail coalition. He didn't win himself. In fact, he went backwards in the election. It's
quite interesting, though, because in this country we have this debate all the time over whether lawyers, the courts, have too much power over elected governments. We saw that during the whole Brexit years. And still today over the illegal immigration. So it's one of those things that's hitting many democracies.
Why do you think it's on the front of the FT, just out of interest? It hasn't been picked up on the front of any of the other papers. Is there a particular financial element to all of this? And obviously I know that Biden's not happy with with Netanyahu, and obviously there's been some suggestion in some quarters that actually the US have been funding the protests.
Well, do you know, Isabel, I think that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that, but it's not really a financial story, is it?
No. Emily.
Right,
Telegraph.
let's go to the Telegraph. 8,500 Afghan refugees rescued from the Taliban are to be moved out of hotels. So the government's going to make this announcement today, Emily.
Yes, they are. 8,500 Afghan refugees will be moved out of hotels and into accommodation. They must accept the housing that they are offered. Otherwise, they will have to register homeless, apparently. So it could be that some of these refugees are left without a house, left without a home, if they can't find suitable housing. But apparently this will save money in the long run. Not only is it better for them, of course, but it's better for the taxpayer too over the course. But it does sound like a humongous amount of money. And you did have a report earlier about how some people in the country are worried about the fact that, you know, we're not housing our homeless enough, or our former veterans and things like that. But I think, you know, these are people who have worked for Britain, have risked their lives, should be housed. I think the hotel thing is a bit of a scandal now. Most people do not think that people should be being housed in hotels any longer. And Norman was saying he thinks that you know, military barracks and things would be more suitable.
Yes, I think if you find somewhere where there's a great deal of accommodation together, where you can have groups together, which is away from sensitive areas like seafronts and so on, army barracks, butlins, camps, that sort of thing, are probably the place where it's...
Groundbuster RAF bases.
Why not? I mean, if there's accommodation there which has been designed for a particular purpose, it's suitable accommodation which has been used at sometimes for military purposes, then it's probably going to be OK.
Groundbusters sites, Emily?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. But the cost of all this is absolutely enormous. I mean, on the local authorities, it's very difficult for some local councils to be able to afford this. The government is going to be giving more and more money for all the education needs, transport needs, housing needs, etc., etc., etc. Don't see taxes going down.
No.
So crooks are moving the holes on golf courses. This is in Spain.
This is an extraordinary story, Eamonn. This is, as you say, they're moving the holes on golf greens in order to make sure that the buggies, which people carry around with them, are in situations where they're vulnerable and can be stolen from. So there was a case last week from someone, an English person last week, who had a £16,000 Swiss watch stolen and more than £1,000 in cash from the bag as he focused on his golf. And I must say, it makes a hole in one's bank account, doesn't it?
So the idea, they move the hole, and the hole is near a fence or a gate or something where these guys can nip in, grab the loot, as it were, and then they tee off.
Why would you take a watch off to play golf?
Well, why would you have it with you in the first place in your bag? It's a bit weird.
That is a bit weird.
Maybe it's because you wear it when you're not playing golf, and then when you are playing golf, you don't want it encumbering your stroke.
Yeah.
Eamonn, as a golfer, does a watch encumber your stroke?
Well, my game would be so bad it wouldn't make any difference, really. I wouldn't suppose. A quarter of jobs could soon be automated as a result of breakthrough in artificial intelligence.
See, AI terrifies me.
I agree.
Yes.
I think it's awful.
I say they bill this as a positive story.
I see it as terrible.
And I'm seeing this, no, this is not a breakthrough. This is a really
It says it can
step.
spark an economic boom and increase global gross domestic product by 7% in a decade.
Until they get rid of all the people, and then there's no boom to be had.
Exactly. I do think we put, impact on productivity ahead of everything all the time and then wonder why we've got problems.
But the story also says it could become a tool of the criminal underworld, because last week Europol, the EU's law enforcement agency, warned rapid advances in generative AI could help online fraudsters and be a key criminal business model of the future. So that's also going to be a problem.
When the robots start developing emotions.
Well, I know.
Chaos. Have you not seen all the movies?
Yes, I have.
Robot
I don't
takeover.
Well, I was thinking of that song from a long time ago, in the year 2525, if you know that, Zagan Evans, which is all about how we're going to be kind of useless because the world we've been taken over by robots, effectively.
I mean, I'm scared of screens as it is, so God knows what I'm like with AI.
I don't think a robot could do your job, Isabel.
Oh, I reckon it probably could. Oh, gosh. Right, let's talk about from the sublime to the ridiculous. The front of the Star, it's life-saving boffin Jim, but not as we know it.
Well, you know, I thought we smirked at this one earlier, but actually I thought I'd bring it back because it sounds quite interesting.
Okay.
Space could hold the key to freeing mankind from disease. Apparently,
from AI.
more and more experiments are being done in space. Apparently, proteins are easier to cultivate there, and so this is something that's ongoing and something that there's going to be more of. And it could help us with diseases, skincare issues.
I think that's how they always justify these expensive trips into outer space, by claiming some kind of medical advance.
So cynical.
I'm not sure it's winning me over, but well, that's always been claimed, isn't it?
They can grow crafts on the moon or whatever.
Fabulous. You can also grow it here.
That's right.
Thank you. Norman Baker, Emily Carver, those are your papers. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. That's them for today, 30 minutes now before 9 o'clock.
OK, we're going to bring you up to date with all of today's top stories now. Humza Yousaf is set to become Scotland's next First Minister after defeating his rivals to become the new SNP leader. The 37-year-old will become the youngest to win the job and the first to come from an ethnic minority background.
Prime Minister will be grilled by senior MPs in post-Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland today. The Commons Liaison Committee will question Rishi Sunak on his Windsor framework newly signed with the EU, despite opposition from the DUP and other Conservatives.
3 gambling businesses owned by William Hill will pay a total of £19.2 million for widespread and alarming social responsibility and anti-money laundering failures, as according to the Gambling Commission. The settlement is the largest in the Commission's history.
OK, now a musical interlude. We're going to bring you back in time to the 90s. Well, c'est la vie indeed. Adele Lynch, Sinead O'Carroll and Lindsay Armour. Didn't get that one right. Lindsay, why is your name not Irish?
Armagh. I'm half Greek, you see.
Yeah.
How do we say that?
Armagh.
Armagh.
That's the one I reckon I could have got. I was a bit worried about the one. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
I mean, I'm super excited. I loved these tracks, and it's great to see the 90s coming back and having a bit of a renaissance. And, you know, the girls, it's about time the girls got involved in it. All the boy bands have been doing it.
Yeah, totally.
Actually,
Go girls.
Leading the way.
Isabel is very excited. We worked out she was 17 when you were at the height of your
how old were
powers.
you when C'est la Vie was out? Probably the same age.
I was 20.
Yeah. Similar. Sinead was
I was a little bit older.
But yeah, between sort of 17, 23, that kind of age when we first started.
And so tell me about who is coming to see you now. Is it people like me who is reliving their past, bringing their kids? I don't know if you have kids that
Yeah, we all.
There's
10 between us.
I do. It's really funny, actually, you say that, because the first show we did years ago when we came back after like a 12-year break, Sinead was expecting the audience to be the children who used to watch us. Yeah. And when she came out on stage, that's
got
she
grey hair.
got a shock, and she was like, who are all these
Where's all the
grown-ups? I
kids?
don't understand. Which is hilarious.
I
So
know.
it is everybody like yourself who was 17 at the time, who is now grown up. And sometimes they bring their kids, which is really kind of cool. Because our music is for kids as well. It's nostalgia and it's kids.
Why do you want to do it again? It's like athletes, you know, athletes, and they think, could I still pick up a golf club or a tennis racket or whatever? Could I still do it? You've looked into the mirror and you three have decided we can still do this.
Well, do you know what, Eamonn? Like, we've been doing it for the last 10 years gigging, but as regards kind of new music, it was our producer. We did a podcast and he felt that he was missing out on the podcast, and it kind of reminded him of all the good times we had. He got in touch with us and it was just like, I need to get you girls back into the studio to do new music. So
Was there any resistance to that?
No.
No. And I think the timing was right as well, because as Sinead said, we have been gigging for the past 10 years. But I think, you know, just kind of, we've all been having families, and, you know, some of us had families slightly later, Kiwi and myself. So it was kind of just waiting for the right time to be able to commit to it as well. And it's also 25 years since C'est la Vie came out.
Oh my God.
It's a bit of an anniversary.
That's crazy. When you look back, are they happy memories? Because you hear so often about, I don't know if you were manufactured or how you were put together, but you know, you do hear horror stories about people when they look back on their time in the spotlight, that it was, you know, there were eating disorders or there were arguments between the gang. I mean, was it there fond memories? Was it a good time?
Yeah, we had an incredible time. We put ourselves together, so we were friends first, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, of course, we were tired and we were working like crazy, but we loved our jobs.
And people always say to us, "Oh, have you got any crazy party stories from back in the day?" And we're actually quite sad because the answer is no. Because we liked our jobs, we went to bed so we could like be awake the next day and enjoy our work.
Yeah.
But your house must have been an interesting house, you know. I know a lot of music would have played a big part in many Irish homes. But, you know, having produced you and having produced Shane, was it a musical household?
Boyzone fan.
No, also,
Really?
so when we were growing up, there was a lot of music in our house because my granddad, like, he taught a couple of the chieftains how to play their instruments and stuff. And my nana always played music, so we always had music and singing in the house. Dad liked a bit of rock, so we used to crank that up every morning, like.
Every morning.
But I mean, who knew the three of us were going to be pop stars? I mean, that is kind of crazy.
Who's missing, incidentally?
Oh, Kiwi is not here.
Oh, yeah.
Other duties, unfortunately. She just couldn't make it this morning.
Yeah.
And we imagine, obviously, because of your family link to Boyzone, that you guys were all hanging out together, the two Irish pop bands of the day. Is that true? I mean, are you still friends with all the troops in Boyzone?
I suppose we didn't really have
cross
time
paths.
to- No, not really. I mean, we went on tour with them that first time.
We did one gig.
Or was it one gig?
One gig.
It was in Belfast, that kind of thing in the early days.
Our very first gig, we'd no manager, nothing. We hadn't a clue what we were doing. We did it up in Belfast, driving up here, driving up to do this gig. Yeah, so I think we did 2 or 3 maybe. Just a couple.
Yeah. And you know, it must help that there's a kind of renaissance of the 90s. I noticed that you're wearing the crop top and the jeans.
I know.
You see the kids wearing all this stuff.
Trying to hold it all in.
But it's kind of gone full circle. Like, we all remember it the first time round, and so that's got to play to your hands that you're
Do you know, it's
back in
incredible.
fashion.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, I go to the shops now and there's denim everywhere.
Yeah.
Like double denim, triple denim, there's denim everywhere, all kinds of denim. And I just think, gosh, like if that was back in the day, it would be absolutely sorted, you know?
Totally. It's mad. And then also because now everything is streaming, isn't it? So like Bewitched are now on like streaming services, Spotify, etc., where you used to have to dust off your CD and that's yours. It's like, we're actually in 2023, guys.
So, Sinead, tell us about this single then. You mentioned it there. So, Birthday. This is out this week, isn't it? And this is what we used to call in my day an EP. You had a number of singles
Yeah,
on it.
I know. Well, we've got this kind of thing called The Collection, and it's C'est la Vie, and Birthday is the new single, and is part of The Collection. So it's available everywhere. We're just really excited to be able to bring Bewitched into 2023, and our kids, we've got teenagers that are 14, 15, and they've given us the thumbs up, so I think...
Not embarrassing, Mum.
Not embarrassing,
We're getting away with it so far.
Yeah. Well, except in your house, you wouldn't get away with it.
Get away with nothing.
Not with your brother.
It's sad.
Did you read about him and his candles?
His candles.
It's in the papers today. Shane, candles get on my wick.
What? Yeah, he won't have them in the house.
He's frightened of candles.
Yeah.
I get that.
That's true.
Frightened of them.
No, I get it.
It's true.
It reminds him of death.
I don't.
Really?
I haven't got into it with him, but it's only recently I figured this out because I'm like, I don't understand. But he will not light a candle in the house.
So we'll forget that with Birthday then. Don't celebrate it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's a good one. I like that.
Steady cannon.
Guys, welcome back. Stick the pace.
you.
Come and
Thank you.
us
Lovely to
again
see you
when
guys.
you're on-
Yeah.
on the
Thanks a
road.
million.
Lovely to meet you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Right, stay with us. We're going to have more coming up on what Humza Yousaf means for the future of Scotland and the Union.
But first, let's go to Aidan McGivern. Aidan has the Tuesday weather forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A dry and, in some places, chilly start, but a lot of cloud across the UK. Rain is already arriving into western parts, and that rain will sweep across the rest of the country during the rest of the day. Low pressure increasingly in charge of our weather over the next few days, that low sitting to the west, bringing southwesterly winds. That means mild air, but also moist air, and we're certainly going to see a lot of moisture in the atmosphere during the rest of the day. So by late morning, the rain reaching parts of central and eastern Scotland, falling as snow over the hills for a time before it's just rain, and it's going to be a damp afternoon for the vast majority. A lot of cloud, that cloud sitting on the hills in the west as well, so quite gloomy out there. And it's going to feel cold, I think, especially in the east and northeast, where the cloud comes in after a cold start to the day. But Northern Ireland, the exception. Here, 14 Celsius is possible because the sun's going to break through by the afternoon, albeit with some heavy showers. And those showers will push into western Scotland, parts of northwest England, North Wales, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere as well. But the main area of persistent rains moved through by the early hours of Wednesday. And a lot of cloud remains, I think, as well as a breeze. So it's going to be a frost-free night. Temperatures in most places staying at 8 to 11 Celsius. But it is a cloudy start to Wednesday, and there's more wet weather lining up to come in during the morning. That's going to affect parts of southwest England into Wales, Northern Ireland, as well as northwest England and the Midlands by lunchtime. Further north, some cloud breaks, some sunny spells coming through, and it's going to feel much milder all of a sudden. 15, 16, perhaps even 17 Celsius. We keep that mild air on Thursday, a mixture of sunny spells and heavy showers on Thursday, and then the potential on Friday for some very wet and windy weather, especially in the south.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Holyrood's on collision course with Westminster as Humza Yousaf prepares to become First Minister of Scotland.
Very nice to see you. 9 o'clock's the time. It is a Tuesday, the 28th of March. Nearly the end of March already.
I know, time flies.
Goodness me, tempus fugit. Breakfast on GB News, Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The new leader of the SNP has vowed to resurrect the controversial gender reforms that brought down Nicola Sturgeon as he prepares to be formally confirmed as Scotland's new First Minister. The pledge puts him on course for a legal clash with Westminster, which previously vetoed the proposal.
Landlords will be able to evict tenants causing disruption within 2 weeks as part of the government's new plan to tackle antisocial behaviour. Now, under these proposals, drug use, drunken behaviour and excessive noise will be grounds for eviction.
The Governor of the Bank of England's blamed early retirement for high interest rates and rising inflation. The warning from Andrew Bailey comes after the Chancellor's budget, in which Jeremy Hunt launched a series of proposals to get people back to work.
And 6 people, including 3 children under 9, have been murdered in a school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. The 28-year-old shooter, a transgender ex-student, was killed by police at the scene.
And it's day 2 of a high-profile court case into alleged phone tapping by the publisher of the Daily Mail. Yesterday, the Duke of Sussex made a surprise appearance at the court alongside Sir Elton John, who's also bringing legal action against associated newspapers.
Thank you for getting in touch this morning, airing your views, but we don't want many of them in the next half hour because we've got Eve Pollard instead. So our top story this morning is Humza Yousaf is on course for a clash with the UK government Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and this is over
controversial Scottish gender legislation as he prepares to be confirmed as the country's new First Minister.
He's 37 years of age. He will be sworn in today after pledging to challenge Westminster's veto of the Scottish reforms, which contributed to the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon.
Well, for more analysis, we're joined now by the tabloid legend herself, Eve Pollard. Good morning to you.
Morning.
And it's not just the transgender act that he's going to be taking on, but also calling for another referendum straight away.
That's going to work, isn't it? I mean, what's interesting is how young he is.
Yes.
But, I mean, this is fascinating. He's picked up the 2 things that actually, in the end, destroyed his predecessor.
Yes.
So you feel there's maybe something he's not saying that he will push harder. I mean, it seems to me if you live in Scotland, they have great problems with the NHS, great problems with drugs. I personally, and education, I personally, if I lived there, would be more worried about them.
Well, a blind man on a galloping horse could see that those are more important to everyday folk. However, he had to get elected in the first place, so could he just have been playing to the party?
Well, he might have been playing. That would be interesting. I mean, I see he's got a little girl because she was sitting on her mum's lap in the audience. He will be caring about the NHS and education and stuff much more than this gender identification thing at 16. What do you know at 16? What do you know at any age, frankly?
But just feel we've all been down this road before, so, you know, why would he want to pick a fight on it?
Exactly. So he may change. Let's see how smart and clever he is.
Well, he has to govern in this pact with the Greens. And the Greens have some of these more, what some would describe as woke views, which I suppose would account for some of the positions that he's taking.
Yes, but the Greens don't have that much power, and they may change too. I mean, the thing about Scotland, you forget, it seems huge, I mean, when you go there, but actually it's quite a little place from the political point of view.
It's a big place, but not many people.
5.4 million people.
Yes.
Less than in the whole of London.
Yes, absolutely. And they're not very, very partial to taking refugees and change.
Yes. You see, the thing is, I mean, Nick, whatever anybody thinks of Nicola Sturgeon, she was a fantastic operator.
She was.
And if gender identification tied her up in knots or took her down, you would think, leave it alone.
Well, you also hear that a lot of people didn't push themselves forward, waiting perhaps for a disaster to happen. But he's young enough and should be nimble enough to get out of this. Let's worry about everyday things that really matter to people.
Could I ask you about everyday things that really matter to people?
Yeah.
If you go to antisocial behaviour, right, if you're walking down the street or you pull back your curtains or whatever it is there anything that really gets on your goat that you really think, why don't they do something about that?
Front gardens that are just a total tip. You just know that underneath...
Have caravans in them.
Oh, caravans in them.
Ice cream vans.
Rats. Mouse.
Yes.
You know, they're just... I mean, you just want to say... And if people are lucky enough to get a council house, keep it as clean as you can. I mean, it's hard work, I know, it's very, very boring in my opinion, but on the other hand, it's essential. And I think it's quite good that Rishi has actually come down to ground level and is now, obviously we have to talk about immigration, obviously we have to talk about the economy, but people's lives are run by little things like this, that you walk past a house every day and it drives you mad.
I'm a great believer in cleanliness. I mean, they say cleanliness is next to godliness, and, you know, so roundabouts that have flowers in them, hanging baskets in the high street, places that don't have graffiti, front gardens that are tidy. And I know this, it doesn't have to just be council houses, it can be anybody's house. You know, somebody who's a bit eccentric or whatever living in a house and they don't clean the windows or do anything to the front garden. But it affects on a community. And when you get a community back and people have pride in the community, then I think
that makes such a difference. And since we are going to have, let's hope, coronation parties in a few weeks' time, this is the time to go out. Saturday, people should go out and they should drop a nice note in saying, we really think it's lovely you live in our street, but could you please tidy up the front? Or clean the windows or something. Or can we help you? There may be one old lady living there who can't do it.
Oh, that's a nice thought.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a very nice thought.
Well, community is all about that.
British way. Very polite, respectful, but also getting your message across. I'm all about that.
Well, the message that the Prime Minister's trying to get across is zero tolerance, right? A zero tolerance approach to the antisocial behaviour that we were talking about there. So, as Eve was saying, it wants to make people feel safer and more content in their own communities.
Well, our South East of England reporter Ray Addison went to Eastbourne and Brighton in East Sussex to find out if the public think it'll work.
If you don't have the community with you, you can make any laws you want. They won't work.
Skeptics warn Rishi Sunak's plans to crack down on antisocial behaviour could fail unless parents start taking better responsibility for their children. Dubbed immediate justice, offenders will be forced to clean up their vandalism within 48 hours. However, some say this zero-tolerance approach will fall at the first hurdle if communities don't step up. Ken Ross is a Neighbourhood Watch representative in Eastbourne.
These people don't come outside and suddenly become antisocial yobs. They come from a home that allows it. The community itself has to look inwards and find where these people are coming from. These lads or girls, they don't just happen once they walk out the door. They're there all the time inside the house. And more responsibility should be taken really by the parents.
Last year, nearby Brighton recorded close to 4,500 cases of antisocial behaviour. That's around 20% of all offences. Simon Charlton is the chair of the St Luke's Residents Association. He says when communities do report crime, it's often ignored.
In my particular area, some really lovely buildings have had spray paint put all over them, unpleasant graffiti put up on the walls, and generally it's just not addressed by the councils. Even though we report them rigorously and regularly, we just don't seem to get the follow-up. If you take one of the hotspots for graffiti in my area, there are actually 2 CCTV cameras focused on that area. But ever since I've been chair of the Residents Association for the last 3 years, there have been no prosecutions to my knowledge.
The government's £160 million plan includes new funding for police and crime commissioners to ensure that offenders are punished as soon as possible. Katie Bourne is the PCC for Sussex. She says stopping antisocial behaviour is a top priority.
Once an area starts to get to graffiti, the whole area starts to go down and then your antisocial behaviour increases. It's about prioritising what matters. And local people tell me what matters to them is antisocial behaviour, because that's the offending they see in their everyday lives. And that's the bit that makes them feel less confident and unsafe.
Labour says Conservative cuts to neighbourhood policing have allowed offenders to get away without punishment. Rishi Sunak will be hoping this crackdown will get visible results quickly and increase public confidence that justice is being done. Ray Addison, GB News.
Now, that is the perfect illustration, Eve, of, as some of the contributors were saying there, little bits of graffiti not dealt with, nobody claiming ownership, and then they grow and grow and grow.
Sure. And I think they make houses, streets, walls look hideous. I mean, something beautiful. Banksy can come round any time. But these are just hideous. And then, of course, then the weather has a go at it. It makes it worse. And then somebody sticks something on top of it because it started to fade. Awful.
No, I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah.
Banksy, he can do one, as far as I'm concerned. Couldn't care less. I don't see anything with him that's artistic.
See, I lived in Bristol for a decade, and the word was that he is Bristolian or from near there. So actually, I kind of grew to appreciate some of
quite
him.
attractive,
It was just clever. It was quite clever.
With the balloon and
without getting into politics.
He's still a vandal.
Well, no one wants to...
Andrew, back me up here.
Oh, here we go.
I'm no fan. Sorry.
No, there you are. That's you and me, Andrew. See, Andrew, you and me would be good living in a little sort of commune, you know, where you have old people living together. We would have tiny bushes. We would, and clean pathways and all that sort of thing.
It could be in a Richard Osman book.
And we could grumble and groan together.
Well, there would be nothing to grumble and groan about by the sounds of it.
Hopefully you're going to have lots to grumble and groan about with On the Point, or To the Point, even at 9:30. Dawn and Andrew, what have you got?
SNP.
SNP, yeah. We have got a smorgasbord of politics.
Yeah.
We have Rishi, we have SNP, we have Corbyn, we have actually... It's a Knickerbocker glory, actually, of politics, I think, coming up.
And we're asking, is Humza Yousaf, does he live up to his nickname? Humza Useless? Because I suspect he rather does.
Well,
and that's exactly, and that's what the people in the SNP have said about him.
I mean, just judging by his first two moves, one suspects he doesn't really have a clue, because, I mean, those two things brought down his predecessors. So
well, that's the problem, isn't it? And he hasn't really excelled himself in any of the ministries he's had, has he?
He's been a disaster. It transports
he's only a child. Leave him alone.
Well, he's a very powerful man now.
Young.
He's First Minister.
Rishi Sunak's only 42.
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
What? And 42. I'm trying to think. Neck size, collar size, waist size.
Stop it.
He's a tiny little man.
He's
tiny.
It's been interesting. We've got a Muslim First Minister in Scotland, a Hindu Prime Minister in the whole of the United Kingdom. Fascinating. People say that we're not a very tolerant country.
A racist, horrible country, in particular Prince Harry, and then suddenly...
Exactly. Oh, and that's not counting the amount of not prime ministers, what are they, mayors all around the country.
Mayor of London.
Yeah.
The Home Secretary.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
To name but a few.
Yeah,
James Cleverly, Foreign Secretary.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Well, we look forward to both of you 9:30, and we will stay tuned. It sounds like a cracking show.
When we come back, we're going to talk about your man, Prince Harry, right? So he's been in court to watch all that's going on there. He doesn't have to say anything or whatever. But anyway...
But almost more interesting than that.
What?
The King, who's cancelled his trip to France, too busy to see him. That'll tell him.
Oh, indeed. Talking with Eve Pollard about that after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end.
I can't
Britain's
wink,
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 9:17 and it is day 2 of Associated Newspapers' court case at the High Court. Prince Harry popped in yesterday, as did Elton John and Sadie Frost.
I didn't think Elton was looking well.
Well, he did his best.
Did you not? No, but seriously, he was right.
Well,
I mean,
he's been photographed in a wheelchair and things recently, hasn't he? But, he did his best. They're all taking action against the Daily Mail publisher.
OK. Eve Pollard is here, and a former newspaper editor herself. You see, the thing is that when I heard this story, first of all, I thought, are these recent accusations? But this is all historical.
Yes.
And all of this, I mean, it has been mostly dealt with, hasn't it?
Well, it's certainly been dealt with by newspapers who stopped doing it. I have to say, I was around too early for any of this stuff, so I'm glad I never got involved.
You were between too early for the technology, then it all happened, and now it's all cleaned up after Leveson.
I think it's cleaned up because I think people are terrified of what they would do to the press.
Well, I think definitely it's cleaned up. I mean, as somebody in the public eye, I mean, what I went through 30 years ago, 20 years ago, compared to now, it just doesn't compare.
Exactly. And also the laws change in so many ways.
Exactly.
Although I believe some of the allegations in this case relate to as recently as 2018-19, but I'm not sure.
It's more, it seems to be more, much older.
But Eve, give us an insight. I know you say you predated these particular types of techniques, but I mean, as a newspaper editor, talk about the pressure that you're under to
get the story.
With the scoop.
Listen, the temptation when they discovered that every phone had this secret code, and none of us even realised it. We walked around, picked up our phones, bought our phones and used them.
And you could play the answer messages back.
Correct. And it was terrible with that little girl who was murdered. I mean, terrible
Millie
things.
Dowler.
Millie Dowler, yes. And I think that newspapers are, particularly at that time, because the laws have changed about what you can write about people, where you get the information, how you can stand it up. And lawyers are very, very much bigger people now on newspapers, I suspect.
Medical records you can't touch.
Everything, absolutely quite right. So I think that there is a feeling that people are, more aware, celebrities are more aware. If you've told somebody one thing, you know that person has told it. It's not come off your phone. We're more aware of our phones. The terrible thing is where technology takes us next. But, of course, the pressure to get a story. I mean, I used to come in on a Saturday morning and say, have we got a splash? Splash is your front page. And they said no. And I said, don't worry, loads of time, knowing by 5 o'clock, latest, it had to go down, you know. It's enormous pressure. And, of course, then there were much, much bigger circulations.
And, Eve, were you surprised by what Doreen Lawrence had to say in court yesterday? Of course, Stephen Lawrence's mother, and we understood that the owner or the editor of the Mail at the time was actually connected.
The editor, Paul Dacre, knew her husband, and the father told him all about the case and all about the fact that police had really done very little to find out what was going on. And they had promoted, and they did that front page with the 4 pictures of the guys who were supposed to have done it. I'm not sure all of them were convicted. And that changed the world. And I'm saddened. I understand why she was upset, because she, in the middle of all that, must have wondered, how did they find that out? How did they find that out? And they were probably listening to phone calls, if they were. That's the other thing. None of this has been proved. And they've all come here, probably Prince Harry looking for a bit of money, you know how it is, and they've all come here looking to be assuaged that this is what was going on, because you can go nuts. I mean, I remember Charlotte Church writing that she told her mother about meeting a new boy, and then suddenly it was in the paper and she thought her mother was talking to journalists.
Yeah.
And, of course, it was nothing of the case. So I'm hoping that they come out of this and it gets sorted out. And, I mean, Elton John and all of them, Liz Hurley, they deserve their day if it's true.
Right. What is true is that Prince Harry has arrived in London and he goes to court yesterday and then he thinks, right, I've got a bit of time in hand, I'll pop and see my dad. And
Dad is going to Germany today.
Yes.
But, I mean, he was around
You know, that
yesterday.
packing and all that stuff. Look, I think it's a very difficult situation. What would you do if it was your son who'd
What would
written
you
a
do
book
even
about...
if it was your son?
I'd want to get him and I'd want to throttle him, but I think you're very scared that anything you do will be the next Netflix film or the next Diary.
Absolutely.
I mean, these two are out on the prairie. They're running wild. Maybe they have to wait for a while. I mean, the fact is, he does want them to be at the coronation. He did invite them. If I'd been their father, I might have been tempted not to. But we'll see.
It's interesting. And Prince of Wales is busy in Norfolk, apparently. No time either. Although
Well,
no
his children are already on half-term or Easter holidays or
But they
something.
all have helicopters. Crikey, Harry can
When
fly
is it ever going to get through your head that they are entitled to not like him?
No, I get it.
They're
I'm trying
entitled
to labour the
to
point that
protect
they clearly
themselves.
dislike each other, especially after the punching allegations.
They're entitled to protect themselves, and the way you protect yourself is not speaking to him. And one thing or another will happen. Either there'll be a rapprochement, or they will not talk to them for so long that Harry and Meghan will have nothing new to write.
Yeah.
If they haven't talked to the royal family for 2 years, 3 years, etc., and if there's been no getting together, he'll have no story. And perhaps that would be good for them, because then they'd write and do other things, which they keep saying they want to do. Enough for the royal family already.
What else has caught your eye in the newspapers today, or anything you want to get off your chest?
Well, there's not much you want to get off your chest. I think that there is a feeling that it's not just the antisocial behaviour we were talking about, the awful thing. I read about hot tubs having 10 people in it. The idea of having, as it were, a bath with 9 other people horrifies me.
Yes.
Am I the only person in the world
Well,
who
they've
feels
done
that?
tests, haven't they, of water in shared hot tubs, and they've found traces of faeces and all sorts of things historically. I don't know if that's still the case, but I've never forgotten reading that in the papers as a teenager.
Yes.
And I remember my husband took me to a lovely spa weekend and people were packed in like sardines. It was like walruses at the beach, and I didn't
go anywhere near.
I had a very well-known person in the public eye, a woman, who asked me, would me and my wife become her and her husband's hot tub buddies?
And?
Yes. But I said no.
That's OK. They're people you know.
No, I'm not.
Well,
I think it's a bit
would
weird.
you insist on
But
showering first?
what's wrong with sitting on a sofa and having a chat or dinner or something?
Maybe, but I do think I like the idea. I like the idea of the bleak midwinter. You have a dinner party, you're a bit tipsy, you got a hot tub in the garden, and maybe 6 of you hop in with some
The next minute your toes are running up and down my leg or something.
None of that.
Yes,
None
that'll
of that.
be
It's
something.
just out under the stars. It's freezing cold, but you're warm in the.
I've been to those places where they say there is a hot tub in the garden of this hotel, and you look out at the dark and you think, Nah.
Nah.
Not me.
No.
But maybe you're more adventurous. I mean, maybe I'm missing something.
You and me will be sitting on the sofa while she's bubbling away. Let her
Perfect.
to
The fewer the
perfection.
better. I'll be on my
Eve,
own.
always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
see
you.
you next
Thank
week.
you very much indeed. Lovely to see you.
That's it from us this morning. We'll be back bright and early, 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Whatever you're doing today, have yourself a good day and get to the point with Andrew and Dawn.
Good morning and welcome to The Point with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson.
Today, it's Holmes is expected to declared as SNP
First Minister.
First Minister. Da, da, da.
We're going to be examining whether his nickname, useless,
Oh, you weren't meant to say
is
that.
appropriate. I think it might be.
Possibly might be.
All that coming up here on the To The Point with me and Dawn at 9.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people.